Chapter 567. Zhang Feng wanted to curse. But he still couldn't find anyone. He couldn't help but sit down on the bench and stare blankly out of the window. What could he do to maximize the benefits of this little bit of food? Fengzi, I heard a rumor. We only need to hold on for half a month. Half a month later, a batch of food will arrive in Chang and from Hunan province. Aren't you talking nonsense? Lao Tzu is asking how to hold on for now. Half a month? Who can eat 20,000 don of food in this half a month? Even 5,000 people won't be enough to eat. Zhang Feng slapped his forehead. However, Li Qingxian's words really made Zhang Feng heave a deep sigh of relief. Half a month? Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of a way. Li Qingxian, quickly go to Chang and city and find someone for me. No matter what method you use, you have to find him for me. Who? Sun Simiao. Fengzi, why do you want me to find Dr. Sun Simiao for this matter? He won't be able to solve the problem even if he comes. Yes, if he's here, then everything will be easy. Zhang Feng said with certainty, there are only 20,000 don of food now. Even if each person eats 1 or 2 don of food a day, these 5,000 people will have to eat 500 don of food a day. This is only now. What if more people come? What if more people come to buy food? What about this? This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is, if 5,000 people come every day, what should we do? If the imperial edict is issued, and there are students coming, what should we do? Li Qingxian and the others were silent. However, they couldn't connect this matter with Sun Simiao even if they were beaten to death. Sun Simiao can be called the king of medicine, so naturally, he has studied all kinds of plants in this mountain. If we can ask him to help us dig out all the edible things in this mountain, buzz. Li Qingxian and the others couldn't help but feel a roar in their minds. That's not right, Fengzi. This mountain has long been emptied. As long as it's edible, Li Qingxian was about to say something, but before he could finish, his entire body froze. If it was any other place, not to mention grass, even tree bark would have been ground into powder and eaten. But where was this place? This was Mount E, the usually stingy Mount E. If Zhang Feng hadn't wanted to come here, who would have known about this barren mountain? They could not help but think of a bold idea. Zhang Feng, this guy, thought of something incredible again. Okay, then I'll go down the mountain now and see if I can get some food. As Li Qingxian spoke, he hurriedly left. Just as Li Qingxian left, Old He and the others from Tong Huifang also brought pots, bowls, ladles, basins, or bags of things up the mountain. As soon as they arrived at the mountain gate, everyone was stunned by what they saw. The mountain was empty before, but what about now? How long had it been? All they could see were heads. Old He and the others couldn't help but ask the guards at the gate, Sir, we're looking for the person in charge here. We're his neighbors, and he asked us to come. The person in charge? The imperial guards were stunned. They looked at the crown prince who had just left, then looked at the wooden house, and then understood. Wait, I'll go and report. After a while, Zhang Feng, Qing Chimo, and the others arrived at the mountain gate. When Old He and the others saw Zhang Feng, they waved their hands. He waved his hand and shouted, Neighbors, give all the things you brought to Fengzi. Fengzi, this is the last bit of food left in my family. Take it for emergency. As Old He spoke, he threw a deflated cloth bag full of pudding to Zhang Feng and waved his hand, Old He's family, go and do your work. By the way, young Master Du, what are we doing? Du Go was stunned. Zhang Feng was stunned. All the guards were stunned. Seeing the thousands of neighbors put the bags that were still warm in their arms at Zhang Feng's feet, and slowly piled up, everyone's eyes were wet. The people who were working in the distance couldn't help but stare. They all stopped what they were doing and looked over. Old He. Zhang Feng took a deep breath and shouted angrily. He pulled Old He to the side and scolded, You brought all of your people here. What about your family? Family? My whole family is here. What about your daughter? I sent her to Miss Jingshu. When Zhang Feng heard this, he was anxious. Then your food. Before he could finish, Old He waved his hand and said with a serious face, Feng Zi, we're neighbors, right? Yes. You helped us when we were in trouble. Now that you're in trouble, if we don't help you, who will? You're the pride of our Tonghui Square. So, your problems are the problems of the entire Tonghui Square. Okay, let's stop talking. Young Master Du, let's get to work. Don't be stunned. At this moment, a loud voice came from the mountain gate again. All the veterans of the Serenity Square have brought 30 dan of food to make a living. Brother Zhang, do you want us to be disabled? Chapter 568. Isan Pastry Shop, 90 dan of grain. Tufu Zheng, 10 dan of grain. Baotai Bank, 130 dan of grain. Cripple Wang from Tong Hui Fang, 15 dan of grain. Yen Lai Restaurant, 300 dan of grain. Lord Nyo from Cheng and local government, 27 dan of grain and 1,200 strings of coins. Voices sounded one after another. In front of Zhang Feng, bags of grain were piled up like a mountain. Wei Shuyu and the others were trembling all over. What did Zhang Feng do that made so many people respond to his call? What did Zhang Feng do? Wasn't this what they wanted? But what about them? Other than relying on their fists and their father's name, who would care about them? Although everyone was respectful in front of him, what was he? Was that his own charm? No. It was those people who were afraid of him. But now, Zhang Feng didn't say a word, and these people who rarely interacted with him, even if they had never met him, were willing to send grain. What was this? This was where Zhang Feng's charm lay. Unconsciously, a touch of passion flashed in their eyes. Was this what they were going to learn in the future? Was this also what the academy was going to learn in the future? But at this moment, Zhang Feng took a deep breath, clasped his fist and said to everyone one by one, thank you for your kindness. I will remember everything today, and in the future, hey. How can I wait for the future? If you don't mind, you can use my son. Even if he dies, it's because he doesn't have the ability. Not to mention my sons, if you like my old bones, I'll sell them to you in the future. But you have to provide me with food. Ha 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 ha. Old Zheng, do you want your son to learn how to butcher pigs? F***ck off. Lao Tzu's son will enter the Ministry of Works in the future. You'd better learn to be obedient, or when we become rich with Feng Zi, you'll still be playing with mud. Ha ha ha. Good. Everyone, thank you for thinking so highly of me. I won't forget your help today. My academy doesn't have any requirements. As long as you want to learn, even if you are a blockhead, as long as you want to climb up, Zhang Feng, can't guarantee anything, but I can at least let you learn some skills that can at least feed your family in these 3 years. Zhang Feng said so. Instantly, there was a roar of exclamation and ecstasy. There were even some commoners who pressed down on their children and kowtowed to Zhang Feng. But at this time, those refugees were also anxious. My lord, can our family's child come? Even if it's just to pour some night incense for you. That's right, my lord. Just tell me, even if you want my child to do odd jobs, it's fine. Sir, Zhang Feng was a little embarrassed. He looked at Du Go and the others and said, I know that you were born with a golden spoon in your mouth. Are you confused? I didn't do anything, so why would they come here at this time? Why didn't they come here when they knew about the existence of the imperial edict? Why? Du Go and the others shook their heads. At this time, not only them, but everyone present was silent. Zhang Feng continued, this is not because I, Zhang Feng, have any ability. It is because I am on their side. What do they need? What they need is to learn how to read, to get rid of their slave status, to make a name for themselves. But you, from the moment you were born, you never thought about these things. Of course, you also have your own goals. That is to get rid of the identity of a merchant and enter the official career. And they are the same type of people as you and me. Everyone wants to take a step forward. That's why they were willing to take out the last bit of food they had when they saw these people who had no food to eat. This is not because they are noble, but because they want to help these people. They have always had a thought in their hearts. That is, no work, no reward. That is why they didn't come before. They were waiting for an opportunity. Otherwise, they would feel sorry in their hearts. They would feel that this matter will always be a sore point in their hearts. Confucius once said that to teach a person a profession, there must be a reward. I did not ask for money. This is not because I am noble, but because they are poor. So they used this method to gift to me. Otherwise, even if they are successful in their studies, they will still be pointed at behind their backs. Zhang Feng sighed and said, "Of course, my academy is not for everyone. If you want to come here, then you must participate in the construction of the academy. This is also a test. Money, I will set the rules here today. As long as it is the academy opened by me, Zhang Feng, anyone who wants to come here will not ask for money. But you must build your own residence here with your own hands and without anyone's help. This is the basics. If you can't even build your own residence, then may I ask, what is the use of learning this thing?" Chapter 569. Zhang Feng didn't have any other intentions. To put it bluntly, he just wanted to tell everyone that they could get free education. You could go to school for free here, even if you were a blockhead. But at the very least, you had to have the ability to support yourself. If you didn't even have this ability, you should scram back to where you came from. However, the meaning of these words was even more different in everyone's ears. But now, Zhang Feng's words dispelled the worries of the people in Chang'an. On the other hand, he was telling the refugees that if they wanted to stay here, they had to rely on their own abilities. It was impossible for them to steal chickens and dogs. At this moment, after the citizens cheered for a while, they once again joined in the construction of the White Deer Institute in a frenzy. There was no other reason other than that they wanted to show Zhang Feng their capabilities. On the other side, Zhu Zi's father and the others were basically dragging their families along. Without Dugo saying anything, these people even brought a dozen big pots. Moreover, they were using the same kind of pots used to cook pigs' food. At this moment, more than a dozen pots were set up. Smoke rose in spirals from the kitchen chimneys. At this moment, on the other side, in front of Dugo, this kid still had some backbone. He didn't want a single person. He set up a small table and placed the 4 treasures of the study on it. He only called an old man who knew how to read and write. He checked the identities of the people who bought the food to see if there was one person per household. Then, he distributed the food and registered it. Although he was a little flustered previously, after more than a dozen people, he was able to start selling the food in an orderly manner. On the other side, Wei Shuyu, Cheng Chimo, and Zhang Sun Chong were giving orders. No, it could be said that they were bare-chested and carrying pieces of rocks on their backs. Some of them had taken off their clothes and were only wearing a piece of cloth. They were jumping into the mud to make mud. Even the women and children were following the women at the construction site. They were scraping tree bark or weaving bamboo frames. Seeing this, Zhang Feng nodded in satisfaction. Looking at the busy old he, Zhang Feng quietly called old he to the side and said, "Old he, this porridge, you have to control it to the extent of 1 or 2 meters per person. First, pour the porridge into the dozens of big wooden barrels. You have to remember this clearly. Later, you call Zhu Zi's father, or you, one of you, go over there and catch 30 chickens and 30 ducks. Clean them all up, then take 3 big pots and boil it as hard as you can." Old he couldn't help but be stunned. "That's not right, Feng Zi. These chickens and ducks are such good things. How can you waste them like this?" Logically speaking, if there wasn't enough food, wouldn't it be the same if they added some grass and roots? How could he add such a good item? Wouldn't that be a waste? You know nothing. Zhang Feng glared at old he. Look, this is all physical work. How can you do it just by drinking? In less than 3 days, this person will be exhausted. Just do as I say. After saying that, Zhang Feng ignored old He, who was exasperated with his failure to live up to his expectations, and turned to Zhu Zi's father and said, I have a bag of things in my house. Don't ask what it is. You only have 1 pot. When the porridge is ready, add 2 pounds of it to each pot. You ask, and you do it. Zhu Zi's father was still in a daze. When he reacted, Zhang Feng had already run away. Zhang Feng didn't do anything else. He was just tinkering with his new thing. He was tinkering with a porridge that could resist hunger. Bone strengthening powder, plus chicken, duck, and pig porridge. To put it bluntly, it was 8 treasures porridge. In this era, it was definitely not enough to just drink porridge. If a person's appetite was lacking in oil and water, even if you gave him a bowl of rice, he would still be able to finish it. However, if he was given enough oil and water, not only would he be able to save on food, but he would also be able to resist hunger and strengthen his body. This was the real good stuff. Previously, he had collected those locusts next door, which he didn't have time to sell, or prepared to use as feed for pigs, cows, and horses. Now, he got them all in baskets. Basically, this was a great help to him. However, only God knew how many more refugees would come by then. He only hoped that there would be fewer refugees. Otherwise, he would have a lot of fun. Thinking about it, Zhang Feng came to the pig farm in the valley. At this time, Zheng Tufu had already brought his son, Zheng Wenkai, and a large group of workers here to scold those craftsmen. They had hurt the pigs all over. Seeing Zhang Feng coming over, Zheng Tufu was shocked. He hurried over and said, Brother Zhang, this is not a place you can come to. It's too dirty. Go quickly. No, 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 I'm here for you. Zhang Feng pointed at the pigs, which numbered at least 3,000, and said, How about it? I'll leave all these to you. Is it okay? Zheng Tufu stared at him when he heard that. You're looking down on me, aren't you? Our Zheng family has been butchers for generations. We don't have any other skills, but we do have some skills when it comes to butchering and selling meat. But this group of bastards, how could they ruin these oily and slippery pigs like this? If these pigs are kept like this, they'll be finished sooner or later. Zhang Feng was interested. Then what do you think we should do with these pigs? Chapter 570. Hearing that, Zheng Tufu could not help but feel excited. Pointing at a rock, the two of them squatted on the rock and looked at the pigs in the open-air pig pen. Look at these pigs. They eat the grasshoppers so well that they look glossy and smooth. If you eat them at this time, the stench in the meat will lessen a lot. The most important thing is that these pigs are too fat. If they are kept like this, they will lose fat every day. My heart aches just looking at them. Zhang Feng could not help but shake his head when he heard that. I asked you to come here because of this. Do you know of a type of pig that can stretch up to 200 caddies? What? 200 caddies of fat pig? Zheng Tufu exploded. His exclamation attracted everyone's attention. Seeing that, Zheng Tufu hurriedly grabbed Zhang Feng's arm and asked in a low voice, Well, little brother, tell me. How can a pig grow up to 200 caddies? My family has been dealing with pigs for several generations. I really didn't know that a pig could grow up to 200 caddies. Are you sure this is true? In this era, pigs that could grow up to 150 caddies had to have been reared for at least 3 to 5 years. However, the stench of the pig could be smelled even from a few streets away. This type of pig was basically kept for breeding. Or an old sow, otherwise, a normal pig wouldn't be able to reach 150 caddies. The pig that Butcher Zheng gave to Zhang Feng last time was a pig that Butcher Zheng had been raising for 4.5 years. Although the pork was selling well, especially in the past few months, it was a different story for this kind of pig. Although it was embarrassing, it was very nutritious. Therefore, it was really rare to give something like this to someone. However, to be able to rear a 200 caddies pig? And a big fat pig at that? How was that possible? Zhang Feng smiled faintly. You don't need to know how it grew up to 200 caddies. You'll know when the time comes. Let me ask you, if I give this pig to you, will you take it? When the time comes, I'll make this pig farm suffer a huge loss. Not to mention Chang and City, even Tubo and Turkic people will come to buy our pigs. Are you willing to be the king of pigs? Yes. How could Jing Tufu not do it? He had been dealing with pigs all his life. Now that he was here, not only could he find a successful husband for his son, but he could also put down his butcher knife and do other things. How could he not do it? However, Jing Tufu still asked with uncertainty, Little brother Zhang, this pig is easy to deal with, but this is just a low-grade thing after all. Are you sure this thing will sell well when the time comes? Of course. But, who told you that this pig is an animal? Just wait and see. When the time comes, I can guarantee that these pigs will grow to 200 pounds in less than half a year. Moreover, these pigs won't have any foul smell on them. This is something better than beef and mutton. Hearing this, Jing Tufu's eyes turned red. A mouthful of phlegm was stuck in his throat, making gurgling sounds. Both of his hands gripped Zhang Feng tightly, causing Zhang Feng to grimace in pain. I say, isn't this just a pig? Do you have to be like this? If they had the fodder and the food I prepared, let alone half a year, they would be able to grow to 200 pounds in 3 months. I say, you. Zhang Feng was not lying. There was actually a problem with this pig's breed. However, the most important thing was that the people of this era did not have the habit of feeding pigs. Basically, every pig was either a breeding pig or a sow. It would be strange if they tasted good. If he were to lose weight, he would no longer care about anything else. He would only know how to eat and sleep. It would be strange if he didn't gain weight. However, to the people of this era, all of this was too inconceivable. Zhang Feng patted Jing Tufu, who was still rooted to the ground. Old Zheng, there's a lot to learn. If you do it, I'll pass on all my pig rearing skills to you. What do you think? You want to pass on all your pig rearing skills to me? You know how to rear pigs? Jing Tufu went crazy. However, this was not important. What was important was that Zhang Feng was going to pass on his skills. Jing Tufu could not help but kneel in front of Zhang Feng agitatedly and kowtow 3 times. No matter how hard Zhang Feng tried to pull him up, he could not. Zhang Feng did not care. Was this not a perfect pig rearing system? Was this necessary? After settling Jing Tufu down with much difficulty, Zhang Feng said, since you've agreed, then in a few days, I'll give you a secret. You must not tell anyone. I promise, even if the heavenly king Lao Tzu asks, I, old Zheng, will not tell anyone. Jing Tufu swore for a while. Zhang Feng was speechless again. All right, it's all up to you. However, you have to go back to your old profession. Kill a pig, kill one every day. Remove the foul smell, chop it up and throw it into the pot to stew. When the foul smell is gone, pour it into the bowl of porridge. Remember, you must dare to do it before these people start eating. As he spoke, Zhang Feng took out a small cloth bag from his chest and handed it to Jing Tufu. You know what's inside. When the time comes, go to the pharmacy and get me some more. Every time you get pork, give me this bag. Also, don't be stingy with the salt. Put in what you need, Zhang Feng instructed Jing Tufu on some matters. Jing Tufu opened the cloth bag subconsciously. The cloth bag contained nothing but star anise, cinnamon, bay leaves and so on. Jing Tufu could not help but be stunned. Were these not the usual medicinal herbs from the pharmacy? Could this be pork? Chapter 571. Li Qingxian was very busy. On Yulan Mountain, he had been greatly affected. This was especially true when he saw those people kneel before Zhang Feng, and when old he and the others brought their families with them, all of them bringing their last grain with them. As the crown prince, when would he ever have such prestige? He had heard everything Zhang Feng had said. But he had not stepped forward. He had memorized everything Zhang Feng had said from a distance. Once they reached the foot of Yulan Mountain, Li Qingxian urged his horse and his guards back to the eastern palace. The moment he entered, he issued 3 orders. Pass on my order. Hurry and find divine Dr. Sun Simiao. Second, take my crown prince token and go from house to house to borrow grain. If you lend it to this crown prince today, once the famine is over, this crown prince will return to Dan. Third, gather all the properties under the eastern palace and sell everything that should be sold, especially this one's fields. Sell them all for grain. The eunuchs and guards of the eastern palace were all dumbfounded. What was wrong with the crown prince? He had been fine just a moment ago. It had only been a day since they last met, but he had almost sold the entire eastern palace. This matter had also alarmed the crown princess, Ho Junji's daughter. The crown princess rushed into the study, and when she saw Li Qingxian's anxious face, she couldn't help but cry. Crown prince, what's wrong? Why did you suddenly? Li Qingxian's eyes brightened at the sight of the crown princess, and he grabbed her hand. Beloved consort, I remember that your father has 1,000 mu of fertile land, right? The crown princess was taken aback. She nodded. That's wonderful. Right now, let's write a letter to Lord Father-in-law. I want to borrow grain from him. How much grain does your Highness Crown Prince want to borrow from old man? At this moment, Ho Junji slowly walked out of the rear hall, his hands behind his back. Li Qingxian hastily got up and bowed as a junior would. In truth, there was no need for this sort of greeting between him and Ho Junji. Although they were father and son-in-law, they were still sovereign and subject. But Li Qingxian was truly anxious at this moment. Father-in-law, your arrival is truly wonderful. Do you have any more grain? Ho Junji's eyes flashed. If you had asked yesterday, that old man would have given you 300 to 500 stones without a second thought. But, sigh. Li Qingxian was shocked and hurriedly asked, what's wrong? Ho Junji patted Li Qingxian on the shoulder and gestured for the crown princess to leave. Then he said, a few days ago, His Majesty summoned all of us back to the capital precisely because of the food shortage. During the morning court session today, the old man did not see you. Just what were you busy with? Why did I hear that you were tinkering with White Deer College on some abandoned mountain outside Chang'an City? Isn't this a wedding disturbance? As the crown prince, how can you mess around with those commoners? Also, why don't you consider your identity? And the impact this matter would have on the court? When the old man was in Luozhou, he often heard that you don't attend court and often go to Chang'an. Now the officials have a lot of opinions about you. Ho Junji was rather dissatisfied with the crown prince's recent actions. He didn't know what the crown prince was doing, and he even suspected that the crown prince was intentionally concealing this information. And no one else besides the emperor could do this. He didn't know what the emperor was doing, but all the strange phenomena in Chang'an City seemed to revolve around one person. That person was Zhang Feng. From the establishment of that strange university in Chang'an to this White Deer College, the emperor had actually personally issued a decree. What did this mean? Moreover, he dared to conclude that this Zhang Feng had an extremely close relationship with the crown prince. After receiving all this information, Ho Junji was certain that all the countermeasures had to do with Zhang Feng. The fine salt, the way to deal with Tubo and the other countries, the control of the locust plague, and so on. Which one of these wasn't a magnificent feat that could stun the world? But he knew that none of these things could have been done by Li Shimin, nor could they have been done by people like Fang Xianling or Du Ruhui. And they certainly couldn't have been done by the crown prince. Everything was clear. All of this had been done by Zhang Feng. This was also very strange. What was Zhang Feng up to? Why was he doing this? Moreover, Ho Junji could vaguely sense a change in the crown prince's behavior. The crown prince had always been extremely respectful to him, and they had maintained a constant correspondence, but in the past half a year, the letters had stopped. Ho Junji couldn't help but wonder why. But based on the crown prince's actions today, there seemed to be a major problem. Fortunately, Li Shimon's other sons had not participated in this matter. Otherwise, he would have had to go to Shao Mountain and see for himself just what sort of divine figure this Zhang Feng was. He, Hou Junji, had decided on the future emperor, and no one could lightly shake his position. Hou Junji's eyes flashed as he stroked his beard. Crown Prince, there's no need to be impatient. As the heir apparent, you should show the demeanor you should have. What do you need grain for? Is it for Shao Mountain? Li Qingxian nodded. It truly is for Shao Mountain. At least 6,000 disaster victims have gathered at Shao Mountain, and one of my brothers has stored up 20,000 dan of grain to help the disaster victims. But 20,000 dan still isn't enough. Thus, this prince wants to see if he can go down the mountain and gather some more grain. Hou Junji asked a few more questions, and then he narrowed his eyes and walked around the crown prince's study for around an hour. Finally, he said, I can give you 10,000 dan of grain, but you have to tell His Majesty about this matter in court, or else I won't give you a single coin. Chapter 572. Hou Junji's final words caused Li Qingxian's eyes to brighten. How could he not know what Hou Junji was talking about? On the contrary, he was keenly aware of what was going on. It was precisely because he knew what Hou Junji was talking about that Li Qingxian couldn't help but hesitate. He clearly knew what his father-in-law was thinking. He wanted nothing more than to preserve his position as heir apparent. But in truth, before Zhang Feng had appeared, he truly had been extremely worried about this. He had been worried that his fourth brother, Qingke, might be his greatest enemy. It was simply because his fourth brother was too beloved by his imperial father and imperial mother. In the past, he truly had been very wary of Li Tai, but that was all in the past. After Zhang Feng appeared, he clearly felt that his imperial father wasn't biased in this matter. At the very least, he hadn't allowed Li Tai to study at the academy. But even if he did come to the academy, given his domineering personality, would Zhang Feng care about him? If he wasn't killed by Zhang Feng, it would be because Li Tai was lucky. But he was different. He had long since called Zhang Feng his brother, and Li Qingxian believed that this friendship was extremely firm. At the very least, Zhang Feng basically told him everything. Take this matter as an example. Although it seemed like Zhang Feng was making random arrangements, upon careful consideration, Li Qingxian understood what Zhang Feng was thinking. Qing Chimo and the others were skilled in the army. Although carrying bricks didn't seem to have anything to do with that, Li Qingxian vaguely sensed that there was nothing wrong with Zhang Feng's arrangements. The reason was that Du Go liked to study mathematics, so he had arranged for Li Qingxian to do this so that Li Qingxian could use it in his daily life. But while he couldn't see anything wrong with his mission, Li Qingxian vaguely sensed that he was acting as the steward of White Deer College. Otherwise, why would he leave the matter of registering names and searching for people to him? If he really was the son of a merchant, then finding Sun Simiao would mean that he was trying to make friends with someone of high status. But, however, this was exactly what Li Qingxian lacked. If he could make use of this to settle this matter, wouldn't these people's connections all recognize him? That would be very useful to the imperial court. After all, Sun Simiao was a miracle doctor. His status was extremely important. Li Qingxian was in a daze. Moreover, there would occasionally be a look on his face that said he had everything under control. How could the shrewd Hou Junji not see it? Your Highness the Crown Prince, this old man shall not disturb you any further. I will be attending the morning assembly tomorrow as well. At that time, it will be up to your Highness the Crown Prince. Hearing this, Li Qingxian bowed. Duke Chen, thank you for your concern for the people. On behalf of the people in Chang, and who were affected by the disaster, I thank you, Duke. Hou Junji meaningfully glanced at Li Qingxian before indifferently saying, I must ask Crown Prince to forgive the Crown Princess. It was old man who did not properly educate her, so it was inevitable that she would offend Crown Prince in some matters. With these words, Hou Junji left. Li Qingxian didn't think too much about it. Hou Junji's grain was enough to stabilize the disaster relief on Shao Mountain, but it was far from enough. Just as Zhang Feng had said, there was still no telling how many students would come. Basically everyone in Chang and city that could come had arrived, and those who had yet to arrive were still watching. If students from other places came, those people in Chang and city who were watching would definitely hurry over. When the time came, there was still a shortage of grain. Li Qingxian sighed. Then he hurried out of the Eastern Palace. The moment Li Qingxian left the Eastern Palace, someone reported the matter of the Crown Prince and Hou Junji to Li Shimin. Li Shimin couldn't help but be taken aback by this news. What did you say? The Crown Prince is borrowing grain? In the imperial study, Li Shimin was wearing a thin robe with an imperial robe draped over his body. Although it was stuffy and hot, how could Li Shimin have the leisure to go to the pavilion in the middle of the lake to enjoy the cool air? All the memorials were asking for grain, grain, and grain. Li Shimin even felt like killing someone. And now, he had heard that Hou Junji had gone to see the Crown Prince, and that the Crown Prince had issued 3 orders upon returning from Shao Mountain: sell property, sell land, and trade for grain. He had even sent someone with the Crown Prince's token to receive grain. Li Shimin couldn't help but think of something. That was Shishan. He hurriedly asked, "We ask you, what is the current situation on Shao Mountain?" Little Gizi hastily replied, "Your Majesty, according to the reports of our scouts, after the message was sent last night, nearly 6,500 people have gone up Shao Mountain." Li Shimin couldn't help but slightly frown. 6,500 people? So many? Then how many disaster victims are accommodated in Chang and city every day? Your Majesty, 3,000 people enter Chang, and every day after their identities are confirmed, and they are all gathered around the reclining square. In the last few days, more than 10,000 disaster victims have entered Chang, and those who were unable to enter Chang, and those who were on their way have all gone up Shao Mountain. Chapter 573. This is bad. Li Shimin's face darkened when he heard that. Summon Fang Xianling now. Your Majesty, Fang Xianling is waiting outside. Summon him. A moment later, Fang Xianling entered the imperial study. They had not seen each other for a few days. Fang Xuanling's face was full of vicissitudes. His cloudy eyes were bloodshot. His gray hair was gathered together carelessly. Even his crown was slanted, as if it was about to fall off. Li Shimin, who was a little angry, could not help but calm down when he saw Fang Xuanling's appearance. Fang Xianling, how is the disaster relief in Chang and city coming along? Your Majesty, I'm sorry for my incompetence. Fang Xianling knelt down and kowtowed. Li Shimin put down the booklet and helped Fang Xianling up personally. He asked, "Tell me about it." Yes. Fang Xianling said, 3 days ago, I was ordered to open the granary in Chang and city for disaster relief. But the granary in Guanlong was also opened at the same time. Our treasury was supposed to give out 100 dan of food every day, but the people in Guanlong were spreading rumors that the food in our treasury was old. There were even rumors that there were more than 100,000 dan of food in our treasury. And the disaster victims believed the rumors. They kept asking for food. There were even robberies. Then, the people in Guanlong opened the granary. The price of food, which was originally 5 copper coins, skyrocketed to 13 copper coins within a day. When Li Shimin heard this, a murderous aura suddenly emerged. Bang! Li Shimin slapped the bookshelf hard and roared angrily, "Didn't I order the treasury to suppress the price of food? Why is the price of food so fierce? Your Majesty, the granary was indeed open to the public, but many of the people who came to buy food died mysteriously. Many more were robbed by mysterious people. Then there was a rumor that the food in the granary was inauspicious. The locust god had returned to punish the people who came to buy food." Fang Xianling didn't dare to say another word. How could Li Shimin not know what he was going to say next? Li Shimin was so angry that his teeth were bleeding. Good, very good. Seeing that we're facing a disaster, I won't lower myself to their level, but they actually think that I don't dare to kill? Men, pass on my decree. Mobilize the Chang and garrison and the secret agents of the Ministry of Justice. Kill anyone who dares to act rashly. Anyone who dares to spread rumors will be killed. Anyone who dares to raise prices will be killed. If the root cause is found, 9 generations of the clan will be executed. Li Shimin really wanted to kill him. However, when Fang Xianling heard this, he couldn't help but be shocked. Your Majesty, right now is the time of the disaster. If we were to fall out with Guanlong at this time, wouldn't the ones who suffer be the victims? This old subject earnestly requests Your Majesty to take back the order. It won't be too late to wait until the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Appointments have finished their investigations. Take it slow. Li Shimin was so angry that he laughed. Then tell me, what should I do with the victims of the disaster in Chang'an City? Every day that passes, my people will starve to death. What should I do? What do you want me to do? When Fang Xianling heard this, he hurriedly knelt on the ground. Xiao Gizi also hurriedly knelt down. Your Majesty, I think that Elder Fang's words are very good. If we make such a big fuss at this time, won't we alarm the grass snake? Guanlong's people just want to take the opportunity to see Your Majesty's attitude, but they don't dare to go too far. If Your Majesty really raises your hand, the people in Chang'an will definitely die. However, I think that the reason why they are doing this is not to test Your Majesty. When Li Shimin heard this, he couldn't help but frown again. The atmosphere in the imperial study became heavy again. When Xiao Gizi saw this, he hurriedly said, Your Majesty, isn't the Crown Prince borrowing food now? I think that if we start from this matter, on the one hand, we can dispel those people's claws and teeth. On the other hand, we can let the people see that Your Majesty cares about the country and the people. This kind of reassurance is more practical than killing thousands of people. When Li Shimin heard this, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Good, that's a good plan. Fang Gonggang, quickly take my token to the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Works, and the Ministry of Appointments. Find everyone behind this matter for me. Kill those who should be killed. Leave no one alive. But you know what to do. When Fang Xianling heard this, he hurriedly knelt down. This old subject obeys. After Fang Xianling left with the order, Li Shimin couldn't help but put down the booklet in his hand. Borrowing food? Interesting, interesting. Li Shimin suddenly thought of something from Li Qingxian's actions. Although Li Qingxian's actions now seemed so abrupt, Li Shimin couldn't help but think of something. Especially the 5 clans and 7 kingdoms. These 7 clans controlled most of the wealth of the Tang dynasty. If he could use this method at this time, on the one hand, he could test which side they wanted to take. On the other hand, he could give them a chance. To put it bluntly, Guanlong wasn't scary. The scary ones were the 7 clans. Although the Li clan originated from the Li clan of Longxi, this thing was already very faint. It's time for me to take a walk. Chapter 574. As Fang Xianling left. The porridge distribution in the Chang'an local treasury, as well as in front of the Grand Duke's mansions, was gradually losing money. In particular, the Chang'an local treasury directly mobilized the Chang'an garrison, led by Wuxia himself. The tower-like man, dressed in full armor, stood at the entrance of the Chang'an local treasury. In an instant, those demons and monsters quieted down. Wuxia glanced at the crowd and roared like a bull, Everyone. Today, I'm here to distribute the food in person. If you dare to make trouble, don't let Lao Tzu find out. Otherwise, not only will Lao Tzu kill you, but he will also go to your house to see what you eat when you grow up. Also, if anyone dares to rob, I've selected 3,000 heroes from the Chang'an garrison, and they'll be among you. If you want to do bad things, if you want to sit in the prison of my military camp, I'll welcome you with open arms. His voice instantly silenced the noisy scene. On the other side, people from the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Revenue, and the Ministry of Works personally participated in the distribution of food. Everyone, today, all the food will be sold according to the average price, which is the usual price, 5 copper coins. But each household can only buy it once a day. If anyone dares to falsely claim it, or dares to claim it more than once, I'll definitely punish those who dare to make trouble according to the criminal law of the Tang dynasty. Now, the sale begins. At the same time, porridge will be distributed evenly at the back door of the Cheng and local treasury, the Grand Duke's mansions, or the mansions of officials. If you don't have money to buy food, you can go to those places. Don't worry, His Majesty already knows about your suffering. Now, His Majesty will only eat a bowl of porridge every day, just like you. So, His Majesty said that although this famine is terrible, as long as we can get through this half a month, things will get better. He hopes that you won't believe those rumors and will live a good life. The commoners were scared out of their wits by this scene. In the front, Yu Qigong was guarding, and behind him, those high-ranking officials, who were rarely seen, were distributing food in person. Could they really buy food this time? Sir, the food is good, but we don't dare to buy it. For the past few days, there have been people dying every day. This is... Which bastard is barking? Yu Qigong glared angrily at the crowd. Then, he kicked his armor and walked over to a bag of rice. He grabbed a handful of rice and stuffed it into his mouth. The crowd watched as the grains of rice dripped from the corner of his mouth to the ground. Everyone felt so sorry for Yu Qigong that they wanted to point at his nose and scold him. But they didn't dare. Yu Qigong's ferocious reputation was built bit by bit. The people of Cheng and might not know the emperor or Feng Xianling, but no one dared to not know him. Compared to Demon King Qing Yaojin, Yu Qigong was more realistic. After all, no one had seen Demon King Qing lose his temper more than a few times. However, Yu Qigong was different. Those who entered the Qingmen brothel had to fight their way in with their fists and feet. As long as they bumped into petty thieves or thieves, they would not be able to escape. I'm sorry. On this day next year, you can go to the mass grave to find him. But now, Yu Qigong was eating the cursed millet? Damn it, could it be true? Or could it be that this killer wasn't even afraid of the curse? Yu Qigong's mouth was full of white rice. He took a bowl of porridge from the guard's hand and gulped it down. Only then did he burp and rub his belly, saying, "Ah. You all saw it. What's wrong with this millet? Lao Tzu has eaten and drank, but nothing happened. Do you all think that your lives are more precious than Lao Tzu's? Lao Tzu only has one sentence. If you want to buy, come. Lao Tzu will protect you today. If anyone dares to rob you, Lao Tzu will let you chop him up. Not only that, but Lao Tzu will also reward you with 100 copper coins or 10 caddies of grain. If you don't want to buy, get out of Lao Tzu's house as soon as possible." Hearing that, finally, everyone was able to relax. It was not an exaggeration to say that these people were despicable. It was because they were afraid of being poor and were often exploited by others. So when they heard those rumors, many people were shocked. But now, seeing that Yu Qigong had eaten and drank and was completely fine, and was even protecting them, this could not help but ignite the courage of the men in Guangzhou. Buy. Lao Tzu risked his life today. I'll buy. I'll buy. I'll buy too. With General Yuqi here, why would Lao Tzu be afraid of a porcelain hammer? Buy. Seeing the people flock up, a smile flashed across Yu Qigong's face. He smacked his lips and waved his hand. Give Lao Tzu another bowl of porridge. Damn it, this porridge with bone-strengthening powder is so comfortable. Bone-strengthening powder? Bone-strengthening powder was added to the porridge? Hearing that, all the people could not help but be stunned. However, when the crowd saw the guard bring in another large bowl of thick porridge, they couldn't help but sniffle. Damn it. It's really bone-strengthening powder? Heavens. His Majesty actually added this thing that was even more precious than gold into the kanji? No wonder I didn't feel hungry after eating a bowl of porridge yesterday. I even felt so energetic. So that's why. Let's go. Damn it, let's eat the porridge. Official, is this porridge for sale? Get out. Lao Tzu only gives porridge, not for sale. Chapter 575. Just as Yu Qigong and the others heaved a sigh of relief, suddenly, a shrill scream was heard from the place where the porridge was being distributed. Ah! This porridge is poisonous. It's poisonous. Damn it, this porridge is poisonous. Everyone was in an uproar when they heard that. Yu Qigong also stood up abruptly and hurriedly pushed the crowd aside. He came to the person who was rolling on the ground with a gloomy expression. By then, it would be too late. Those who had eaten the porridge, those who were about to eat it, and those who were waiting in line were all dumbfounded. What's going on? Wasn't everything fine before this? Why? This is bad. These bastards are trying to poison us to death. My fellow villagers, run quickly. Why did Yu Qigong mobilize 3,000 armored soldiers? They're trying to kill us. The people were scared out of their wits when they heard the terrified screams from the crowd. Some of them even collapsed to the ground. Oh my God. What did I do wrong? Why are they trying to kill us like this? This is bad. They think that we're a burden and want to kill us to end it all. Run. Run. The people in the crowd cried out in alarm. The people were completely flustered. That was because a large group of armored soldiers was quickly surrounding the place. Yu Qigong waved his hand with a gloomy expression and roared, "Which bastard dares to be an alarmist here? Want to kill you? Do you think you're worthy? If you don't want to be rebels, kneel on the ground and shut up, Lao Tzu. Someone, summon the doctors. Summon all the doctors in Chang'an, there's no need. Let the old man take a look." At that moment, an aged voice interrupted Yu Qigong's words. Yu Qigong and the others turned to look. A carriage from the Eastern Palace was slowly coming to a stop at the entrance of the vault. The voice must have come from that carriage. At this time, the people also heard the sound. They turned around and saw a carriage draped in bright yellow. As long as the people in Chang'an were not fools, they would definitely know that this carriage belonged to either the emperor or the crown prince, who dared to use such a configuration. The emperor's carriage was embroidered with a golden dragon brandishing its claws, while the empress's carriage was embroidered with a golden phoenix spreading its wings. Only the crown prince's carriage was embroidered with a dragon. Everyone was shocked. They hurriedly knelt on the ground. Yu Qigong also stood up and cupped his fists. "Welcome, Your Highness." Although Yu Qigong didn't know why the crown prince had come at this time, he still had to show proper etiquette. The crown prince's bodyguard around the carriage also cupped his fists at Yu Qigong. "There's no need for that, General Yu Qigong. Divine Doctor Sun is the divine doctor." Divine doctor? No wonder. But why would the crown prince invite divine Doctor Sun? Before Yu Qigong and the others could think about it, the curtain of the carriage was lifted. Sun Simiao, with a head of silver hair and a deer head walking stick in his hand, got out of the carriage. When everyone saw this, they bowed in unison once again. Divine Doctor Sun. Sun Simiao waved his hand, then hurried to the side of the person who had fallen to the ground and carefully checked his pulse. As for the person who had fallen to the ground, it was unknown whether it was due to fear or pain, but his body was slowly trembling, and he was even faintly moaning. Sun Simiao frowned slightly, then took out a silver needle and inserted 3 needles into the abdomen of the person who had fallen to the ground. Then, he took it out and sniffed it carefully. His frown deepened. At this moment, everyone couldn't help but stretch their necks to look at Dr. Sunday. The king of medicine, Sun Simiao. Not only in Chang'an City, but even in the Tang Empire and beyond, Sun Simiao was famous. Many officials and nobles, including the emperor, treated Sun Simiao with respect, not for any other reason but because he was a divine doctor. At the same time, Yu Qigong was guarding Sun Simiao while watching. His frown deepened, and the moaning of the person who had fallen to the ground was getting weaker. He could not help but feel anxious. After a while, Sun Simiao put away the silver needle, glanced at the person who had fallen to the ground, and snorted coldly. "If you trust me, then I'll tell you about this person's symptoms. Apart from the oily food he ate in the morning and some diarrhea, he is fine. After that, Sun Simiao turned and left. WH. What? Oily food in the morning? Diarrhea? So it's diarrhea? F***CK. Who the F***CK is this guy? Which street is he from? Who knows him? F***CK, he's a troublemaker. F***CK, Lao Tzu's porridge. F***CK your grandpa. At the same time, after Yuchi Gong bade farewell to the divine doctor, he waved his hand and stared at the person who was still lying on the ground. He slowly pulled out the modeo from his waist and said, Lao Tzu will give you 3 breaths. If you tell me why you did this, Lao Tzu will spare your life and only break your legs. If you don't tell me, then F***CK, shut up Lao Tzu forever. Oily food in the morning? F***CK your grandpa. Lao Tzu had not eaten meat for 3 days. F***CK, is this still a disaster victim? Which disaster victim is not so hungry that his chest is sticking to his back? He has money to eat meat. How does he look like a disaster victim? The people could not help but be angry. Mother***Ker, kill him for me. Kill him. General Yuchi, it's easy to dirty my hands by killing him. Let me do it. Lao Tzu's butcher knife is rusty. Chapter 576. I'm afraid that Dr. Sun has been bribed, right? He was poisoned by the porridge. Don't be fooled. Who would dare to go against the imperial court for no reason? Everyone heard that. They were stunned. That was right. Dr. Sun was sitting in the crown prince's carriage, which meant that he was an honored guest of the crown prince. Why would he appear here at this time? It didn't make sense. The discussion in the crowd became louder and louder. Yuchi Gong was furious. He slashed the body of the man who had fallen to the ground. Puff! Blood spurted out of the man's body along with an arm and a shrill scream. Ah! Ah! Yuchi Gong killed someone. Yuchi Gong killed someone. Everyone was dumbfounded. A murderous look flashed across Yuchi Gong's eyes. Are you going to tell me or not? Panic flashed across the man's eyes, but he still held his wound tightly. He glanced at the crowd, gritted his teeth, and screamed, "Kill me if you can." Folks, you've all seen how Li Er treats the people. The porridge was poisoned. They colluded with Sun Simiao to kill us. Think about it. How many disaster victims are in Cheng and city now? Li Er even dared to kill his own brother for the sake of his reputation. How dare you insult the emperor and call him by his name? 9 generations of your family will be executed. Puff! Yuchi Gong finally had the intention to kill. He slashed. That person's right leg was separated from the base of his body. Ah! Li Er is going to kill someone. Folks, run. If we run too late, we'll all die. The man's shrill scream rang out. Screams of horror sounded one after another in the crowd. Then, the people on the streets of Cheng and city became restless. Where are the guards of Cheng and city? Quickly surround this place. Kill anyone who dares to escape. Yes. Yuchi Gong shouted angrily. The soldiers who surrounded the vault instantly raised their spears in front of them, ready to fight. At this moment, how could the normally well-behaved commoners endure this? Mournful screams rang out from the crowd. Yuchi Gong coldly swept his gaze over the crowd and waved his hand. The soldiers took a step forward in unison. Ta-ta-ta. With the sound of armor clashing, everyone finally knew that Yuchi Gong wasn't joking. He really knew how to kill. Everyone could not help but feel their hair stand on end. They could neither stand nor squat. Yuchi Gong ignored the crowd and pulled out a dagger from his waist. He slowly squatted beside the man and said indifferently, "Don't worry, Lao Tzu won't let you die so easily." Don't think that Lao Tzu doesn't know who's behind you. As long as you tell me who ordered you to do this, Lao Tzu will guarantee your family's safety. By the way, I just heard from my subordinate that your family lives in Shirley Village outside the city. And there's a 3-month-old baby at home? Oh, look at this. What a cute baby. Gong pretended to sigh. The man finally could not take it anymore. He asked in a trembling voice, You. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. He panicked. However, when he thought of how terrifying that person was, he couldn't help but tremble all over. Don't worry, as long as you tell me who ordered you to do this, Lao Tzu will not only guarantee your family's safety, but also give you a quick death. Think about it, do you believe that person's words or Lao Tzu's? Every single person who entered the city was recorded and backed up. At the same time, the people from the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Appointments quickly took action to investigate this person's background. There was no other way. This matter was too serious. Even the emperor was furious. Under such a swift investigation, the man finally could not hold it in anymore. Can you guarantee my family's safety? Don't worry. Then you have to swear to the heavens that not only will you guarantee their safety, but you will also ensure that they don't have to worry about food and clothing. Gong's mouth twitched. Do you think you have the right to negotiate? I've already given you a chance. If you had told me from the start, not only would you have been rewarded, but you would also have gotten half of that person's property. But you gave up. That person's eyes flickered with a hint of struggle. At this moment, his words were heard by all the commoners. What was going on? Was this person a spy of that person with ulterior motives? Could he be a Turkic spy? Lao Tzu's time is limited. I'll give you 3 breaths. How dare you? At this moment, there was a sharp sound of something breaking through the air. Gong couldn't help but fly into a rage. He roared angrily, but it was too late. When he pulled out his modeo, an arrow was stuck in the forehead of the man who had fallen to the ground. Gong was furious. How dare he kill someone right under his nose? What was this? This was a slap to his face. Gong couldn't help but lock his gaze on a certain person in the crowd like a sharp sword. He waved his hand and said, Execute. Chapter 577. Following Gong's slash, the sword slashed down. A large group of soldiers swarmed in from the periphery of the encirclement. On top of the treasury, 3 to 5 spies from the Ministry of Personnel Affairs and Ministry of Justice pointed at a certain person in the crowd. Then, a few soldiers instantly restrained that person. At this moment, the people finally understood why this was happening. Why did so many departments mobilize for such a small matter and even alert Gong? It turned out that they wanted to ferret out the person who didn't want them to live. How could this be? This was King killing them. Beat them. Beat them to death for Lao Tzu. CKU, do you dare to let Lao Tzu starve to death? Die. In an instant, the sound of pottery bowls and stone bowls breaking could be heard, as well as the screams of agony. Gong looked at the crowd and shouted angrily, Lao Tzu said before that anyone who dares to circle around will be killed without mercy. What is this? This is a rebellion. They want you to starve to death. They were the ones who spread the rumors that they stole your food. Lao Tzu doesn't want these people anymore because I already know their background. Now, continue to distribute the food. You can do whatever you want with these people. At this moment, those who had been beaten to the point of being on the verge of death, they finally panicked. Spare us, sir. Sir, I have something to say. Sir, I want to report someone. It was the idea of the owner of the tea house at Chang'an's East Gate. He said that as long as I did it, he would give me some food. Gong smiled. However, he did not stop them. Instead, he watched as the angry people beat them to death one by one. Yuqi Gong waved his hand. Come, give them new bowls. This belongs to Lao Tzu. Also, the reward money that Lao Tzu said before will count, but it's not easy to calculate. So today, Lao Tzu will pay out of his own pocket. Everyone will get a caddy of food for free, and they can buy another caddy. Okay. Thank you, General Yuqi. Thank you, General Yuqi. Yuqi. Yuqi Gong waved his hand. If you want to thank someone, then thank His Majesty. Lao Tzu did things according to the rules, but Lao Tzu is someone who never plays with sand. Today, Lao Tzu is happy. What I reward you is your reward. If you discover something like this in the future, you all know Lao Tzu's residence. Just when the situation in Chang'an City had settled down. There was also a problem with Li Qingxian. He had sent out more than 30 people to borrow grain, but they had only managed to borrow 300 dong. These were all given by people who were on good terms with him. But what about the rest? Still, he did not lend a helping hand. Selling land was even more out of the question. Li Qingxian felt like killing someone when he heard the price being called out. 1 stone of corn, 1 mu of fertile land. God d***mn, was this something a human could do? Li Qingxian fiercely suppressed his anger. He pointed at the eunuchs in the East Palace and scolded, "Send my order again. Whoever dares to raise the price will be killed." Your Highness. Dr. Sun is here. At this moment. Someone hurriedly reported. Hearing this, Li Qingxian slightly suppressed his anger. He waved his hand and said, "You all go and do it quickly. And about the matter of borrowing grain, borrow it for me again. What everyone says, write it down in a small notebook for me." While speaking, Li Qingxian waved his hand and sent everyone away. When everyone left, the king of medicine, Sun Simiao, had already arrived at the study. Li Qingxian hurriedly bowed like a Confucian scholar. Student Li Qingxian greets the divine doctor. Your Highness, you're too kind. Sun Simiao slightly raised Li Qingxian's arm and said, "May I know why your Highness is looking for me?" Li Qingxian invited Sun Simiao to sit down. After serving him tea, he sent everyone away and said, "Dr. Sun, I've invited you here because it's related to the life and death of the people. I think Dr. Sun also doesn't want to see the people suffer, right?" Alas. Sun Simiao sighed deeply and told him what happened at the entrance of the treasury. Finally, he said, "Your Majesty, how will you deal with the people of Guanlong? Before I came here, I was questioned by someone. Please don't ask who that person is." How could Li Qingxian not know who that person was? It was none other than the people of Guanlong. However, this was none of his business. "Divine Doctor, this matter will only end with my father, but I also know a little bit. I might as well tell you." Hearing this, Sun Simiao's eyes lit up. He made a gesture of invitation. Li Qingxian then said, "If those people don't go too far, I think my father will definitely not pick up the butcher's knife. But if they touch the foundation of the Tang dynasty, then..." Li Qingxian didn't say anything. Sun Simiao thought for a while, then stood up and bowed. "This old man thanks your Highness and His Majesty on behalf of the people of the world. Dr. Sun, you don't have to do this. I'm not the kind of person to kill." At this moment, Li Shimon's voice faintly sounded at the door of the Eastern Palace study. Hearing this, Li Qingxian and Sun Simiao both stood up. Li Shimon also entered the Eastern Palace as he spoke. "Dr. Sun, you're tired from the journey. There's no need for such a big ceremony. Please sit down." After Li Shimon sat down, he looked at Li Qingxian and said, "I'm also very curious. You were helping the victims of the disaster, so why did you suddenly sell your property and land? If this were to spread, where would my face go?" Chapter 578. Sun Simiao heard this. He couldn't help but be surprised. He carefully looked at Li Shimon's eyes and Li Qingxian's eyes. The eyes were the windows to the soul. This was the same no matter which era it was in. As the divine medicine, looking, listening, questioning, and feeling the pulse were basic skills. He could see a person's expression at a glance. Sun Simiao was really surprised by this look. There was no hint of acting in their eyes. Did that mean that everything he heard at the door was true? The crown prince wanted to sell his land in order to help the victims? This, although he was shocked, he was still shocked. Sun Simiao only took a sip of tea, suppressed the shock in his heart, and listened carefully. When Li Qingxian heard that, he bowed and said, replying Imperial Father. This matter, while speaking, Li Qingxian glanced at Sun Simiao. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, just say it. Yes. White Deer College only has 20,000 dawn of grain. Today, there are about 6,000 people. According to today's speed, the number of people will definitely exceed 10,000 by tomorrow. These 6,000 people will need to consume a few hundred kilograms of grain every day. If there are more people, in addition to the arrival of that student, then 20,000 dawn is just a drop in the bucket. That's why Brother Zhang Feng asked me to go down the mountain and ask Divine Dr. Sun Simiao to come up the mountain. Oh. Li Shimin frowned slightly. He looked at Sun Simiao. Sun Simiao was also stunned. He couldn't help but ask, Crown Prince, is the White Deer College that you mentioned the one in the Imperial Edict? Divine Dr. Sun, it's really here. Then what do I need to do? I also heard that there's a strange person in Chang'an. Not only did he buy the wheat that sprouted in the fields according to the original price, but he also brewed a magical beer. I also heard that this college was built by him. If my legs are short, then the fried locusts, the locust eggs, and the bone-strengthening powder are all locusts, right? And the medicinal formula to kill the locusts, they were all made by that person, right? As the divine medicine. Although he had been keeping a low profile, he was not stupid. He had tried the bone-strengthening powder and fried locusts that appeared in the market. It was really magical. Not only did he not feel uncomfortable, but he felt energetic after eating it, especially the bone-strengthening powder. But after thinking about it, no one in Chang'an City could do this. And this thing came from Chang'an. Now that this magical college appeared, it made Sun Simiao couldn't help but think a lot. Li Qingxian nodded. The Medicine King's foresight is incredible. This was all done by my brother, Zhang Feng. Good. Simiao's SSSS Saline salutes this old man congratulates your majesty for obtaining such a talent. My great Tang will definitely prosper for generations to come. Li Shimin's dragon countenance was greatly pleased. He got up to help Sun Simiao up and said, Shen Yi is overpraising me. How can this kind of God-bestowed Sun Bijan's good fortune, teat heezes? But there's one thing I don't understand. Li Shimin nodded and said, King of Medicines, just say it. Then I'll offend you. Sun Simiao said, Your Highness, according to what you said, Zhang Feng wanted me to go up the mountain, but why? Brother Zhang Feng didn't tell me, but I know it must have something to do with the grain. Sun Simiao couldn't help but frown. I've been to Shao Mountain a few years ago. But at that time, the locusts had just passed, and the land was barren. Everything that could be eaten was almost gone. Even the old man couldn't help at that time. I don't know, but I think Brother Zhang Feng must have a plan to invite you up the mountain, so, Li Shimin also fell silent. Now, the grain matter was related to the Tang dynasty's lifeline. He didn't understand why Zhang Feng would invite Sun Simiao to go up the mountain at this time. But he vaguely felt that if Sun Simiao went up the mountain this time, he would definitely solve this plague of locusts. However, even the cleverest housewife couldn't cook without rice. He also wanted to know how Zhang Feng was going to solve this plague of locusts. I haven't been to Zhang Feng's place for a long time. Well, if Dr. Sun doesn't mind, why don't you go up the mountain with me tomorrow? Hearing this, Sun Simiao didn't dare to act rashly. He hurriedly got up and bowed. Your Majesty, you're flattering this old man. Forget it, this brat Zhang Feng is indeed a strange person. This old man has long wanted to pay him a visit. Since your Majesty also wants to go, this old man will wait on your Majesty. Sun Simiao agreed. Li Shimin then said, however, Divine Dr. Sun, I have a request. I hope Divine Dr. Sun can agree to it. Please tell me, Your Majesty. Tomorrow, be it in the future, on the mountain or at the foot of the mountain, I hope that Dr. Sun will not mention the identities of me and the Crown Prince in front of Zhang Feng. Just treat us as merchants. Sun Simiao was a little confused. He had lived for dozens of years. It was really the first time he met the emperor. How could he hide his identity around a commoner? What did this mean? But the more it was like this, the more Sun Simiao wanted to see how sacred this person was, who the Tang dynasty emperors and the crown prince had to hide their identity to meet. I'll obey Your Majesty's order. Chapter 579. Dong. 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 5:00 was the most leisurely time of the day for the night watchman. It was also the signal for the night watchman to take turns to work. The moment the morning bell rang, the lights in Chang and city were lit one after another. Some people's palanquins, carriages, and even horses had lanterns or torches on them as they lazily headed towards the imperial city. If one were to look down from the sky, they would see fire dragons converging towards the imperial city under the hazy sky. It looked like a huge dragon. The lights in the depths of the imperial palace were lit one after another, especially in the political announcement hall, which was as bright as day. Early in the morning was the most comfortable time of the day. At this time, there were already groups of eunuchs and maids in the imperial palace hurriedly cleaning up. The market on the Vermilion Bird Bridge was basically empty. Only a few people were selling beer and barbecued meat jerky. The barbecued meat jerky was mostly hunted from the mountains, or it was old cured meat. The smell. It was still coveted by everyone. Even though they were standing at the foot of the 36 steps outside the political announcement palace, they could still smell the tempting aroma. In the past, almost every minister would stop to buy some food and drink a bamboo tube of ice-cold beer soaked in the moat. But now, no matter how greedy they were, they did not dare to do so. Now, the emperor was staring at them. And their clothes seemed to be more tattered than usual. Most of the people here were not so poor that they could not afford to wear clothes or drink beer that cost 1 copper coin. But now, they had to pretend to be poor. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. After all, yesterday, the crown prince went to borrow food from each house. But there were some who were afraid and some who were not. For example, Qing Yaojin was holding a roasted rabbit in one hand and chewing it loudly. He held a bamboo tube in the other hand and drank in big mouthfuls. Everyone smelled the fragrance in the air and looked at Qing Yaojin's showy appearance. Their stomachs began to growl. Everyone swallowed their saliva and cursed Qing Yaojin in their hearts. After entering the political announcement hall, after everyone tidied up their appearance, they closed their eyes and hugged the white jade tablet in their hands. Like clay statues, they kept their mouths shut. At this moment, little Gizi's voice came from the entrance of the rear hall. The emperor has arrived. Only then did everyone hold the white jade tablet and bow in unison, shouting, "Welcome, Your Majesty. Rise." With a wave of his hand, Li Shimin ascended the 8 steps to heaven's staircase and sat down on the dragon throne. He indifferently glanced at the crowd before finally resting his eyes on Ho Junji. As soon as they stood up, the officials began to report their own situations, as well as the recent disaster relief. An hour later, after Li Shimin had taken care of these matters, he said, "Yesterday, I learned by chance that the crown prince had run into a wall when borrowing grain. Is there such a thing?" When Li Qingxian heard this, he said, "Imperial father, there is indeed such a thing. Then did you manage to borrow any grain?" After a few moments of silence, Li Qingxian said, "Your son is incompetent. After running all over Chang'an, I was only able to borrow 500 dan of grain. Fortunately, your son met Duke of Qin, and Duke of Qin generously donated 10,000 dan of grain to your son's White Deer College." Li Qingxian emphasized the words "your son's White Deer College." This time, the officials couldn't help but be shocked. 10,000 dan? Duke of Qin, where did you get the grain? So much, heavens. Li Shimin was also rather surprised. Duke of Qin, is the crown prince's words true? Ho Junji hurriedly said, Your Majesty, this is what a subject should do. Then didn't you donate 10,000 dan yesterday? What is the reason for this? Could it be that your Duke of Qin's family is about to overflow with grain? Ho Junji's lowered eyes flashed. Replying to Your Majesty. This old subject spent most of his time in Luozhou, and Luozhou is the closest place to Chang'an. As the saying goes, a subject should be loyal to the sovereign. Thus, when I learned by chance that Your Majesty was stocking up on grain, this old subject paid special attention. At this time, this old subject has about 50,000 dan of grain. When the famine broke out, this old subject donated 30,000 dan of grain to Luozhou and kept 20,000 dan for emergency use. After learning of the matter in Chang'an, this old subject immediately rushed to Chang'an to offer up this humble subject's meager strength. It really was watertight. How could Li Shimin not know that he had gone straight to the Eastern Palace after leaving the Taiji Palace? Moreover, this Ho Junji was extremely crafty, so Li Shimin was extremely unwilling for his son to interact too much with this sort of person. Fortunately, Zhang Feng's appearance had given Li Shimin hope. Li Shimin couldn't help but nod. Correct. We are delighted to have a capable subject like Duke of Qin. But what is the meaning of this 10,000 dan of grain? All the officials were flabbergasted. When Li Shimin had said that he wanted to stock up on grain, they had vehemently opposed it. Now, when they heard that Duke of Qin had managed to stock up 50,000 dan of grain on the slightest rumor, many of them almost vomited blood. This old fox is really King crafty. Chapter 580. If looks could kill, Ho Junji would have died several hundred times over. It couldn't be helped. If the emperor had spoken of this matter back then, if they had taken out just a little of their fortune to buy several tens of thousands of dan of grain, let alone anything else, they would have made a fortune if they traded it for land. And now that the emperor was in dire need of grain, if they could offer the emperor 10,000 dan of grain, then, at the very least, they would have made a fortune in their career, let alone anything else. But they didn't. Although they didn't have 10,000 dan of grain in their homes, they still had several thousand dan. But what did the emperor mean when he said that the crown prince had borrowed grain yesterday? And now, Ho Junji had lent the crown prince 10,000 dan. What was the meaning of this? Wasn't this a slap to their faces? Just because you're holed up in Luozhou and worried about your loyalty to your sovereign, we're just eating and waiting for death? Fuck your second uncle. Ho Junji could sense the strange atmosphere behind him, but he still continued to speak. This old subject learned that the crown prince had built a white deer college on Mount Shao. This is a matter of great benefit to the country and its people, and although this old subject has retired to Luozhou, my heart is still concerned about the imperial court. Thus, I donated 10,000 dan to Your Majesty and 10,000 dan to the college. This old subject was thinking that if the college on Mount Shao could be built as soon as possible, it would be able to nurture more talents for the Tang dynasty. This is something that should be done as a subject. Moreover, when this old subject learned that the crown prince's college wouldn't take a single copper coin, this old subject decided to donate 10,000 taels of gold. Buzz. The minds of all the officials buzzed. 10,000 taels of gold. You really dared to say such a thing. Aren't you afraid that His Majesty will execute you? How long has it been since you left for Luozhou? How did you get so much wealth? Where did you get all this money? Where did you get all this money? Although all the officials wanted nothing more than to rip off Ho Junji's beard, this old bastard really wasn't human. What was he doing? This was a slap to their faces. When Li Shimin heard this, he could not help but laugh out loud. That's right. Duke Qin, you are truly worthy of being my right-hand man. Very good, very good. But don't worry, we also know that this money is the money you have saved for your retirement. Once the disaster is over, we will think of a way to compensate you. And all of you should learn from Duke Qin. We will remember your Majesty's teachings. What could the officials say? They had already taken advantage of the situation, and now they wanted to donate money and food? That was all nonsense. It was too late. How could Li Shimin not know what this old fox was doing here? He was just trying to pull the crown prince in. Moreover, the White Deer College that the crown prince had just mentioned was his. This was something they had discussed before. Unless Zhang Feng entered the court, the college would temporarily be under the crown prince's name. This was a form of protection. However, even though this camouflage protected Zhang Feng, it also caught a big fish at the same time. 10,000 dan of grain and 10,000 taels of gold. With these things, he hoped that Zhang Feng's college would be able to resolve its crisis as soon as possible. Given Zhang Feng's abilities, these 30,000 dan of grain should be enough to tide him over this crisis, right? Li Shimin's mood improved at this thought. He waved his hand and said, "Today, we have something to announce. All of you should have seen the food shortage in Chang and City, but we have learned that some people are using this disaster to publicize something. We do not wish to see this, so all of you should pay attention." How could they not know of this matter? And who didn't know of Yu Qigong's murder yesterday? But the emperor had actually so casually flattened it. What did this mean? This meant that the emperor was warning them not to cause trouble if they had nothing better to do. Otherwise, they wouldn't even know how they died. This also meant that the emperor was truly angry. However, all of them were old foxes in the imperial court. They hurriedly bowed and said, "All of you will bear this in mind. That's enough. We also have something to announce today. The disaster is not only in Cheng and City, but also in the entire world. However, there are still people in the Tang dynasty who can solve this problem. Therefore, we also want to borrow some grain from them. You are not the only ones who think that the Taiyuan Wang clan and the other 7 major clans can do this." Was the emperor going to look for the 5 clans and 7 kings? Was he going to test them? Or was he simply going to borrow grain? The crowd could not help but feel a little confused. However, at the moment, only the 5 great clans and 7 great clans could solve the problem of food shortage. Excluding Guanlong, in this world, only the 7 great clans had the financial resources to do so. Everyone could not help but be overjoyed. "Your Majesty, I think this is a good idea. On the one hand, it can shorten the gap between the imperial court and the landowning clans. The imperial examination is coming, and then. Your Majesty, I think this is a good idea. But will the 7 clans agree? The grain required for this is not a small amount." Li Shimin waved his hand. "Since all of you are not interested, then it's settled. Wei Zheng, after the imperial court, I'll leave this matter to you." Wei Zheng heard that and said, "Yes, Your Majesty. In that case, the imperial court is dismissed. The crown prince shall stay." Chapter 581. 2 days later. Shao Mountain was crowded with people. However, the outline of a futuristic building could be seen in the distance on this wasteland. Basically, Gan Ziyuan and more than 300 craftsmen had become overseers. There were almost 20,000 people on the construction site. Under the instructions of these craftsmen, they were building crazily. These were all small problems. After all, they were all bumpkins. These were the simplest. However, they needed red bricks and a new type of adhesive. This made them a little confused. At this moment, Dugo stared at Zhang Feng. The two of them had been staring at each other for almost 2 hours. Cheng Chimo and Zhang Sun simply moved a stool and sat at the side to bet on who would win in the end. If Wei Shuyu did not have to guard Shao Mountain, it would be even more lively. After an unknown period of time, Zhang Feng was finally defeated. His waist was sore. And it felt like it was going to break. Zhang Feng held his waist and groaned in his chair. "No matter what, Lao Tzu's academy has to be done as I say. Whatever you say, it's useless. Lao Tzu doesn't care." Dugo also secretly sighed in relief. However, before he could say anything, Chingchumo, who was dozing off at the door, suddenly burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, worm, you lost, I won. I said that Feng Zi would definitely not be able to hold on. This guy is weak. Damn you. Zhang Sun and Zhang Feng scolded at the same time. They could say anything else, but to say that Lao Tzu was weak. Damn you. Stop quarreling. I think we should wait for Li Gan to come and discuss this matter. Ever since that old man Kong came, there have been rules in the academy. If you have nothing to do, look at Cheng and University and Imperial College. What kind of buildings are those? Look at yourself. Not only are you using this half-baked red soil, but you also want to build a cement factory to produce cement. How can this mud be better than this yellow mud? Can this thing be sturdy? You want to make it 3 stories high? Why don't you think about it? It's already a problem whether or not he can even stand 10 feet tall with this thing, and you still want to cultivate 3 levels. In any case, since you handed this matter to me to calculate the materials and costs, then you have to do as I say. Otherwise, we can forget about it. When Zhang Feng heard this, he was instantly displeased. This is Lao Tzu's territory. Since when is it your turn to talk about it? If you want to calculate it, then so be it. If you don't, I'll deduct your credits. Fine, but I can't do something as disrespectful as insulting old man Kong's son. Dugo was also getting excited. He glared at Zhang Feng and roared, I'm really going to interfere in this matter. F***CK, you're rebelling. F***CKU, Lao Tzu, I don't care anymore. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be unable to sit still. He simply angrily called out to Chingchumo and Zhang Sun and left, leaving behind only Dugo, who was upholding the righteous path, and who was there chattering non-stop about what Zhang Feng was doing. And what Zhang Feng was doing was the modern way of building a school building. This school, according to Zhang Feng's idea, was definitely going to be built as high as a 5-story building. But in order to not shock the world, Zhang Feng settled for the next best thing, which was 3 stories. But just this alone annoyed Dugo for 2 days. He followed him when he slept. He followed him when he ate. Even when he went to the toilet, he had to stand guard at the door. Zhang Feng finally broke down. He finally understood why these guys were so afraid of Dugo. It wasn't that this guy was ferocious, but that his mouth was even more venomous than Tang Seng's. Zhang Feng's hair stood on end. He finally gave up. This was something that no one dared to do. Once out of the door, Zhang Feng heaved a long sigh of relief as though he had been reborn. Feng Zi, I'm hungry. I miss the happy days of the tavern. Yeah, especially that barbecued meat. That's what I call fragrant. I've only been eating porridge for the past few days. I'm F***king suspecting if I've come to a temple. Sigh, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. When did we eat meat? Chingchumo and Zhang Sun called out to Wei Shuyu and the other 2. They followed behind Zhang Feng and started nagging again. Zhang Feng was annoyed. Enough, shut up. Lao Tzu doesn't know what he owed you guys in his previous life. He made a monk follow behind him all day long. If you guys aren't convinced, you'll F***king chant scriptures. It's so annoying. If you F***king dare to annoy Lao Tzu again, all of you can get lost. When Chingchumo and the others heard that, they shrunk their necks and did not dare to say another word. However, they could not help but say, Feng Zi, if you have nothing better to do, why are you arguing with Debing? This guy is famous in the stubborn world for nagging. You and him. Zhang Feng exploded. You're not done, are you? Zhang Feng was completely enraged. This time, Chingchumo and the others could only shut up. However, their hands that were rubbing their stomachs changed to patting them. Zhang Feng was speechless. All right. If you guys didn't mention it, I wouldn't have realized. I've been bullied for the past 2 days. I'm really hungry now. Zhang Feng looked around. When he saw the chicken farm not far away, his eyes lit up. Let's go. I'll bring you guys to eat chicken. Chicken? What chicken? However, after the three of them were stunned for a moment, they immediately reacted. Chicken. This was a good feeling. However, there was no pot or stove. How were they going to eat? Chapter 582. Zhang Feng did not explain. At this moment, he could not help but think of the process of making beggar's chicken. Big idiot, you're fast. Go find old he and secretly ask for some pepper, cinnamon, bay leaves, the sauce I made, and fine salt. And Tai Nyo, go get me a bucket of water. The two of them heard him and hurried off. Zhang Sunchong hesitated for a while before asking, Fengzi, are you missing something? What? A pot. How can we eat without a pot? Who said that chicken must be eaten with a pot? Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously. Zhang Sunchong saw Zhang Feng smile and instantly lost his composure. Every time this guy smiled like that, he was going to stir up trouble. Thinking of Zhang Feng's magical skills, Zhang Sunchong could not help but rub his hands together. Zhang Feng saw his expression and pointed to the chicken coop. Butcher Zheng is looking after this place now. You're fast, go get a few chickens and get some eggs while you're at it. Okay. Zhang Sunchong saw that there was something to do and hurried off. Zhang Feng used the golden scimitar embedded with gems that he always carried with him and found a few banana trees that had just sprouted in the bushes. He was instantly overjoyed. With this, things would be easier. When Zhang Feng carried the banana trees back to a small stream in the crevice between two mountains, Qing Chimo and the rest arrived early and killed all the chickens. The ground was littered with white eggs. Zhang Feng could not help but be stunned. Worm, did you rob Butcher Zheng? No, Butcher Zheng heard that you wanted it, so he specially picked 10 fat chickens and a basket of eggs for me. He said that the eggs would spoil if we couldn't finish them. Zhang Feng was speechless. Alright, then you guys, find a pile of clean mud. It has to be clean. It's best if it's dug out from the ground. It's best if it can cover all these chickens. They were dumbfounded. What was he trying to do? But he didn't ask. He ran away in a hurry. Qing Chimo was too slow and was caught by Zhang Feng. You stay here and help me pluck the feathers. Qing Chimo was speechless. He had a slight suspicion that this guy was referring to something else, but he had no evidence, so he could only keep his head down and squat on the ground, plucking the hair. And Zhang Feng's request was very sneaky. But when had Qing Chimo ever plucked a chicken's feathers? In the end, Zhang Feng had no choice but to secretly call Go, Zi and Zhu Zi over. Only then did he solve the problem. When the few of them had finished washing and peeling the chicken, Wei Shuyu and her companion came back with a large pile of mud that weighed at least 100 pounds. The few of them put down the mud and watched Zhang Feng's operation anxiously. Zhang Feng's work made everyone confused again. They saw that he boiled the stuff in a small pot and then smeared all the fragrant stuff on the chickens. But that was not the end of it. In the end, Zhang Feng wrapped the chickens with banana leaves and then carefully covered the mud. Only then did he stop. Then, under the baffled gazes of the few of them, Zhang Feng threw the chickens that had been smeared into the fire and then made a big fire in another place. That was not the end of it. After the dozen or so mud lumps were burned dry and cracked, Zhang Feng took out the mud lumps again and smeared a layer of mud on them. Then he asked Qing Chimo to dig a big hole at the place where the fire had just been. He threw the mud lumps into it, filled it with mud again, and made a big fire. That was the end of it. They couldn't help but be confused. Fengzi, is this thing of yours edible? When had they ever seen such a trick? Even when they were marching and training outside, this had never happened, right? Could this thing still be eaten after being tossed around like that? Zhang Feng glanced at them and didn't say anything. He gently dug up the charcoal at the place where the fire had been and put the eggs in it one by one. He then carefully wrapped the eggs with ashes and finally stopped. This made them even more confused. They looked at Zhang Feng in a daze as he fiddled with the fire. Qing Chimo couldn't help but poke Zhang Sun, who was squatting on the ground, and asked, "Is this guy provoked? Otherwise, why would he waste things like this? He has a stove. Why would he waste things like this?" Zhang Sun looked at Zhang Feng and couldn't help but sigh. Sigh. If Laoli or Dating's father knew that he dared to talk to Fengzi like that, believe it or not, he wouldn't be able to keep his leg. Why? They couldn't help but ask in puzzlement. Zhang Sun sighed and pointed to his head. Fengzi's brain must have been damaged by anger. Qing Chimo rolled his eyes. Could this guy's brain be damaged by anger? He really didn't believe it. With Zhang Feng's character, it would be a blessing from the heavens if he didn't drive someone crazy with his words. However, De Bing, that Motherf asterisk cur, it was time to teach him a lesson. This Motherf asterisk king pervert. If he forced Feng Zi into a corner, then the unlucky ones would be them. At the thought of this, Qing Chimo, Zhang Sun, and the other two started to discuss how to deal with Du Go. This guy really needed to be taught a lesson. Why did he mess with Fengzi for no reason? Son of a bitch. In the end, they really came up with a solution. Fine. Wait, leave the chicken but for him. Chapter 583. Just as they were in the midst of their discussion, good news came from Zhang Feng's side. Something was wrong. It was the aroma of meat. Their stomachs went on strike again. How could they still be in the mood to discuss? What else was there to discuss? Wouldn't it be better to just beat it up? The meeting about Dugo started in a hurry and ended in a hurry. The few of them stared at the fragrant lumps of dirt, drooling all over the ground. Strange, it's really strange. I've heard of cooking without rice before. I didn't expect that today, Lao Tzu would really see cooking without rice. This time, there's some bragging. No, there's some bragging. Qing Chimo was so excited that he stuttered. Most importantly, Zhang Feng used a stone to gently break open the soil. In an instant, the aroma of meat wafted out again. This caused Qing Chimo and the others' eyes to pop out of their sockets. Fengzi, what's this? Beggar's chicken. Zhang Feng peeled the banana leaf with satisfaction and pulled out the golden chicken inside. Although there were a lot of spices missing, Zhang Feng had just found licorice in the bushes and some other dogwood that could be used as spices. The most important thing was that there were a lot of peppercorns. The Tang dynasty was lacking in everything, especially Chang'an. But there was no shortage of peppercorns. No matter whether it was in the mountains around Chang'an city, there were so many peppercorns that it was beyond recognition. Therefore, there was no shortage of spices on the mountain. The fragrant and tender peppercorns filled their nostrils. Zhang Feng couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Not to mention Guzi and Zhuzi, who were squatting in the distance and looking at them. Although they had already drooled all over the ground, Zhuzi's father had strictly warned them that if they dared to be rude in front of Zhang Feng, their legs would be broken and they would be locked up. Therefore, they didn't dare to mess around like before. They also didn't dare to play with Zhang Feng anymore. At this time, Zhang Feng was still a chicken in the mud. Qing Chimo couldn't stand it anymore. Well, Feng Zi, this thing is hot. Your hands are precious. Let me do it. No, I'll do it too. Me too. As they spoke, the three of them bravely stepped forward. Each of them hugged a piece of scalding hot soil as they groaned in pain and ate it. Zhang Feng was speechless. Wasn't it just a beggar's chicken? There were plenty of them. However, when he smelled the aroma of the meat, he was so hungry that he felt dizzy. Calling Go, Zi and Zhu, Zi, the two of them came up and gave them a chicken each, saying, "Eat here, don't tell anyone, otherwise, you won't be able to eat in the future." Zhu Zi looked behind him and said timidly, "Brother Feng Zi, can I leave a drumstick for my sister? I'll leave one for her. You guys can eat it secretly tonight." "All right." It wasn't that Zhang Feng was reluctant. It was that although there were thousands of chickens, they were continuously sent up every day. Although he didn't know where Li Qian got the chickens, there were too many people. If all the people were attracted here, how could he live a good life? Who would eat it? Who wouldn't eat it? Therefore, it was inevitable that he would give them special treatment. It wasn't that he didn't want to. The key was that no one knew how to do this. There were already a lot of things to do now. If this thing was added, wouldn't he go crazy? And at this moment, Li Qingxian's voice came from not far away. Feng Zi, good news, very good news. The few people who were eating chicken were stunned when they heard that. They looked at Li Qingxian, who was running all the way, and asked vaguely, "What's the matter?" Li Qingxian saw their strange actions and sniffed the tempting smell of chicken in the air. He couldn't help but speed up his pace. By the time they rushed to their side, Qing Chumo and the other two had already hidden a chicken for each of them. And the chicken in their hands was almost finished. Li Qingxian glared at them. "Wow! I'm so busy at the foot of the mountain, and you guys are eating chicken here? And eating such delicious chicken? Give me Chintinu, I order you to get me a chicken." Qing Chumo felt uncomfortable when he heard that. But there was no other way. He couldn't afford to offend the crown prince. He could only get up resentfully and smash open a piece of dirt with his fist. In an instant, the crispy yellow roasted chicken was revealed. Moreover, it was accompanied by waves of enticing fragrance. He couldn't help but forget about the crown prince's feng yi and etiquette at this moment. He squatted on the ground and imitated Zhang Feng and the others. He hugged the chicken's butt and took a big bite of the chicken's thigh. Li Qingxian couldn't help but moan in pleasure when he tasted the fragrance in his mouth. At this moment, Zhang Feng asked after finishing a chicken, "What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Have you invited the people I asked you to?" Li Qingxian ignored Zhang Feng. Instead, he looked at Zhang Feng excitedly and asked, "Feng Zi, can you tell me the name of this thing? Beggar's chicken? What's wrong?" Zhang Feng was stunned. Li Qingxian was also stunned. But the next moment, he asked like a madman, "Feng Zi, can you teach me how to cook chicken?" Chapter 584. Your Majesty, the mountain in front is Mount Shao. On the winding mountain road, a caravan dressed in the clothes of merchants was slowly moving in the direction of Mount Shao. In this caravan, Li Shimin was sitting on a slide with half-squinted eyes. He looked at the people on both sides of the road who were constantly moving toward Mount Shao. As he walked, he asked about the situation of the disaster victims' families. The more he asked, the heavier his heart became. At this moment, Xiao Gizi pointed to the densely packed mountain in front of them and said. Li Shimin took a closer look and couldn't help but be shocked by the scene in front of him. He saw that the original forest on the desolate mountain was all leveled, and there were construction sites everywhere. There was a large area on the top of the mountain, and a small group of teenagers gathered together to build houses. Li Shimin couldn't help but wonder. What does this mean? Master Li, Zhang Feng said that if you want to study here, the first thing you have to do is not to use external forces. You have to build a brick house here according to Zhang Feng's rules, and it's according to the so-called area plan. And it's said that if you want to work here to make a living, you have to build your own house before you are qualified to work here. Li Shimin was stunned. He looked at Wei Zheng, who was also sitting on a slide, and asked, Old Wei, is there such a rule? Li Shimin couldn't help but be interested. Wei Zheng desperately waved his folding fan and said, Feng said that if you want to work or study here, you have to show him your ability and let him see if you are qualified to study here. Otherwise, you should get out of here as soon as possible. And I also heard that this guy not only asked those people to build their own houses, but also to build a 3-story building according to his rules. Not only that, he also sent supervisors to supervise them personally. This guy, Li Shimin couldn't help but be in a good mood when he heard this. Although he didn't understand what Zhang Feng wanted to do, this kid obviously wanted to use free labor. However, this was also good. After all, This kid didn't have any money on hand. Moreover, he was so cunning. Although he didn't want money, at the very least, at this stage, he had eliminated all those who were waiting for death. As for those who really wanted to read, they were able to tell the difference. There were advantages and disadvantages to doing this. The advantage was that it could distinguish those who were truly here to learn something. The disadvantage was that it would be difficult for the children of the officials and nobles. However, Li Shimin thought about it and agreed with Zhang Feng's approach. If the academies in our country can do this, then our Tang dynasty will really be different. Li Shimin let out a heartfelt sigh. Wei Zheng fell silent. Although he was still somewhat against Zhang Feng's approach in his heart, after all, it was mentioned in the Book of Sages that although there was no distinction between high and low in studying, it was not something that any ordinary person could learn. This was the only way to distinguish the students from the ordinary people. Zhang Feng did this because he wanted everyone in the world to be able to go to school. This, although he didn't know whether it was good or bad, what could he do when Zhang Feng did this? After all, Zhang Feng's strength and ability were there for all to see. Just as Li Shimin and Wei Zheng were leisurely following the fleeing army to Shao Mountain, a gong was sounded on Shao Mountain at this time. Even Ching Chumo's roar could be heard. Let's eat. As the voice fell, the people who were still playing games instantly dropped their tools like ants and swarmed to the place where the smoke was rising in spirals. That was the place where the mountain gate was built by a few big trees. After hearing the roar, the crowd, who were already moving slowly, became like donkeys that had turned into horses. They rushed up the mountain as if they had gone mad. Li Shimin and the others could only drive all the chickens and ducks that were carrying bone-strengthening powder and food to the side of the road and make way for the people to trample on a spacious road. Looking at the densely packed crowd of people holding up broken bowls, Li Shimin could not help but feel flustered in his heart. What was it that caused my people to become like this? After the people left, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Speed up, I want to see what they are eating." Ah! Following Li Shimin's order, the originally slow group suddenly sped up. Groups of golden guards also opened up a path in front. Some people even hurriedly rode up to the top of the mountain to report. And just as the two places were proceeding in an orderly manner. At the chicken farm behind Shao Mountain, Li Qingxian was holding a large oil paper umbrella. He had moved a makeshift reclining chair made by Zhang Feng and was lying there, directing the dog and dozens of other children to roast the chicken. You are too slow and too stupid. Don't you know how to dig the chicken's stomach? Can this be eaten? And go, Z, can you at least wash the mud off your hands before you go and get the chicken? If you dare to do this, I won't even let you eat the chickens, but I'll leave it for Mantu. Chapter 585. What Li Qingxian didn't notice was, when he started to cook the beggar's chicken, a large number of refugees who had just come up the mountain were attracted by the aroma and slowly gathered around. When Li Qingxian noticed, these people were not far away from him. Zheng Tufu was also holding a butcher knife and staring at those people angrily. What? You all want to rebel? Get the hell out of here and get back to work. Li Qingxian turned around with Zheng Tufu's roar. He didn't know what was going on, but he was shocked by what he saw. Behind him were basically the children who had followed their parents up the mountain. At this time, they were staring at his hand with their big black eyes. You little brat, don't you know how to be secretive after eating a chicken? Look, I'll see how you explain this to Fengzi. Zheng Tufu said hatefully. He stomped his foot and left. At this time, those children looked at the big chicken legs in the hands of Guzi and Zhuzi and couldn't help but step forward. Guzi and Zhuzi quickly hid the chicken legs. But it was too late. When one was hungry, one's IQ would basically be in the negative. Especially when one saw such delicious food, one would have forgotten what IQ was. One of the teenagers couldn't hold back and rushed forward to snatch the chicken in Guzi's hand. But at this time, Li Qingxian's guard hurried over and kicked the person away. How dare you? Why aren't you backing down? Which one of the crown prince's guards wasn't a master? Although the guard had already restrained a lot of his strength, he still kicked the teenager far away. It was only at this moment that those people woke up from their stupor after hearing this cold shout. A teenager who seemed to be that teenager's elder brother hurriedly kowtowed to Li Qingxian in horror. "Sir, please do not kill him. He hasn't eaten for 3 days. He was muddle-headed and offended, sir." Li Qingxian's expression was very bad. He looked at those people and then at the chicken that had just been roasted, as well as the chicken that was already cold. He waved his hand and said, "Guzi, give it to them." Guzi didn't move. Instead, he hugged the chicken in his hand tightly. Li Qingxian was angry, but he didn't know who to vent his anger on. He could only take a deep breath and said, "Wait, I'll roast it for you. You give it to them. Be obedient." "No, I haven't eaten the steamed buns. My brothers haven't eaten." "Be obedient." "Wait, I promise you all will have chicken." Hearing this, Guzi and the others reluctantly threw the chicken to them. When those chickens were handed out, Li Qingxian's thought of fighting didn't happen. The teenager took all the chickens and placed them all on the ground. Then, he tore them apart, piece by piece, and gave them to each person. In the end, these chickens were still not enough. But there was only the last chickens. Gritting his teeth, "TSS, SSS. S's." Regardless of whether it was in the palace or anywhere else, what he wanted to eat was not something that could be done with just a word. Even if he wanted to eat tiger meat, someone would bring it to him immediately. But now, what did he see? Feng Zi had already collected all the rotten food. Why were they still acting like this? "Guzi, you guys, and you guys, quickly go and get the chickens and ducks. The more the better." "No, these chickens and ducks are Brother Feng Zi's. It's okay if you steal a little. How much do you need to eat with so many people? Brother Feng Zi hasn't eaten yet." Guzi immediately protested. Li Qingxian could only wave his hand and say, "Don't worry. Wait for my men. They'll bring thousands and thousands of chickens and ducks up the mountain. What are you afraid of? Did I eat your chickens? Get the hell out of here and catch some chickens." Seeing Li Qingxian's anger and hearing that thousands and thousands of chickens and ducks were coming, Guzi and the others ran away. As they ran, they shouted, "Zhengwazi, young Master Li wants chickens. Lots and lots of chickens." Zheng Tufu, who had just returned from Li Qingxian's place and hadn't even sat on the bench, was green with envy. "You son of AB*TCH, if you dare to call my kid that again, do you believe that Lao Tzu will break your legs?" Guzi couldn't help but shrink his neck when he heard that. He pointed at Li Qingxian and said, "He said that he wants a lot of chickens and ducks to feed those refugees." Zheng Tufu was instantly enraged when he heard that. "So many people? How many chickens is that? No. Without Feng Zi, let alone a single chicken, from now on, I won't give it to anyone. He said that his men will bring thousands and thousands of chickens to make up for it. And we haven't eaten yet. Brother Crazy is also waiting. If you don't give it to us, I'll go look for Brother Feng Zi now." "Wait a minute. How many chickens did that brat say his servants would bring? I heard that there are thousands and thousands. What's wrong?" "Thousands and thousands." Zheng Tufu's vision darkened. He suddenly roared, "Damn it, you prodigal. There's not much food on this mountain to begin with. Damn it, now you have so many mouths. Are you trying to eat Feng Zi?" Chapter 586. Zhang Feng was very busy. When he woke up early in the morning, he encountered more than 1,000 refugees going up the mountain. He wanted Li Gan to deal with them, but he didn't know what possessed him. A beggar's chicken had charmed him. He ran away before the sun rose, and he didn't know where he was. Even Go, Zi, Zhu, Zi, and the group of children who were in charge of distributing the porridge and food were nowhere to be seen. How could this not give Zhang Feng a headache? But this was good. Once this person came, Du Dabing would be busy and wouldn't have time to bicker with him. It was just that when he ran away, he took his blueprint with him. Early in the morning, Zhang Feng was lying on the table, working on the blueprint again. Just as Zhang Feng was about to succeed, he suddenly felt a gust of cold wind. He thought that Go, Z and the rest had returned and were fanning him. Go, Z, the wind is stronger. Oh right, where did that damn person go? I say, Feng Z, who are you talking about? At this moment, Li Shimon's voice sounded behind Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng thought he heard wrong. He turned around and saw that it wasn't Go Z, but Li Shimon, who was fanning him while staring at his blueprint. Lao Li? Old Wei? When did you guys come? Oh right, this is... Turning around, Zhang Feng saw Li Shimon and Wei Zheng, as well as an old man with his hands behind his back, looking at the busy people outside. Li Shimon pointed at Sun Simiao and said, "Isn't this the miracle Dr. Sun Simiao you're looking for?" When Li Gan found out that I was coming yesterday, he ran away. However, when I was at the door, I saw De Bing and the others. But where did Li Gan go? Li Shimon thought that something big had happened and wanted to show off in front of Sun Simiao. But when he went up the mountain, he didn't see him. Li Shimon couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He asked the moment he entered. But how could Zhang Feng care about this? He hurriedly pushed Li Shimon away and came to Sun Simiao. He bowed and said, "Student Zhang Feng greets Mr. Drug God." Only then did Sun Simiao retract his gaze. He cupped his fists and said, "Little friend is too polite. I've long since heard of your matter. To be able to take out 20,000 dan of grain to save the people from disaster at this time, little friend's courage is truly admirable. Elder son, you flatter me. I'm just trying to do my part." Seeing Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao talking back and forth, saying something neither salty nor light, Li Shimon and Sun Simiao were completely left to the side. They simply left the room and wandered around the construction site. "Old Wei, look at this thing. It's built so strangely." As soon as he left the house and wandered around the construction site, Li Shimon noticed something different. Logically speaking, the renovation of a house was nothing more than an earthen house, a brick house, or a wooden house. Although this was just laying the foundation, it seemed to be different from the house that the two of them understood. Li Shimon couldn't help but beckon Wei Shuyu over. "Let me ask you, what's going on?" Of course, Wei Shuyu knew what was going on. She told Li Shimon the whole story. When Li Shimon heard this, he couldn't sit still. He ignored Wei Zheng and hurried into the wooden house. At this time, Zhang Feng and Sun Simiao seemed to be discussing something. Zhang Feng even wrote something and handed it to Sun Simiao. Sun Simiao looked at the piece of paper and didn't say anything. He just left without saying a word. Li Shimon asked curiously, "You can write prescriptions? How is this a prescription?" "This is just a recipe for ingredients. By the way, Lao Li, how come you have time to come here today?" When Li Shimon heard this, he sighed and said, "I'm here to send you food. Duke Chen learned about your situation and sent you 10,000 don of food from Luozhou. I also got more than 10,000 chickens and ducks for you. These were originally from dealing with the locusts last time. Now that I can't keep them alive, I might as well give them all to you. If you like, I'll send you 30,000 pigs in a few days. These pigs are tubos." When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. "Lao Li, you really are my savior. With this batch of food and chickens and ducks, this problem is solved. Originally, I was worried that there wasn't enough food, so I could only ask the drug god to see if he could get something from this mountain and make a fuss about the porridge. But now, since you have food, I'll forget about my plan for the all-nourishing soup. This was really timely help. If it weren't for the 10,000 don of food, Zhang Feng would really go crazy. But now? With so much food all of a sudden, Zhang Feng was naturally overjoyed. However, Li Shimon's mind was full of questions. In the end, he asked the main question, "Fengzi, where's Li gone? Why don't I see him? Did he go down the mountain again?" "No, but that kid disappeared early in the morning. I don't know where he went." When Li Shimin heard this, he was shocked. What happened? Zhang Feng spread his hands. How would I know? When he came back yesterday, he happened to see me cooking chicken. Then, he pestered me to call him. Who knows where that kid is now cooking chicken in some corner. Chapter 587. Li Shimin was angry. Suddenly, a burst of uncontrollable anger surged out of his body. What time was this? This was a time when the entire nation was suffering from hunger. Originally, they thought that the crown prince was actively dealing with this disaster. Moreover, during the morning court yesterday, he was so pleased. But what was the truth? Everyone was trying their best to settle the victims. What about him? What was the crown prince doing? Fengzi, you think about it first. I'll come to you later. I have something to do. Something to do? What's the matter? Zhang Feng was confused. Fine. Initially, he had wanted to ask Old Li to take a look at the blueprint and see what was wrong with it. But now, it had run away. And Li Shimin. How could he not run away? He was the crown prince. If Divine Dr. Sun were to see him wandering around here, the doctor would be busy to death, but he was, how could he? Although Li Shimin wasn't afraid, he couldn't stand the rumors. Li Shimin couldn't help but find a kid as soon as he went out. He took out a piece of corn bun and said, "Kid, did you see Guzi and the others?" Li Shimin had seen the kid before. He used to play with Guzi and the others at the entrance of Zhang Feng's tavern. At this moment, the dark-skinned kid's eyes widened when he saw the steamed bun in Li Shimin's hand. He pointed at himself and said, "Grandpa, is this for me?" Li Shimin wanted to vomit blood. But he suppressed the anger in his heart and nodded. "As long as you tell Grandpa, this corn bun in Grandpa's hand is yours." The kid looked around and made sure no one was paying attention to them. Then he carefully asked Li Shimin to squat down and said, "I told you, but you can't tell anyone else. They are getting chickens in that gully. And there are so many people there now. There are not enough chickens." Chickens. How dare he? Li Shimin had long known that the crown prince had messed around in Chang'an City. But that was before, so he could turn a blind eye to it. But where was this place? Although there were no spies here, the craftsmen all knew them. Moreover, how could he guarantee that Wei Shuyu and the others wouldn't spread the news? Or if the commoners saw it and spread it around, then where would Li Shimin's face go? Today, in the morning court, he had praised the crown prince for being sensible and knowing how to worry for the people. But now? What was he doing? "Little Gizi, give me the sword." Li Shimin stood up, gritting his teeth as he growled. Little Gizi, who was following behind Li Shimin, shuddered when he heard this. "Your Highness, there's no need for that, right? Let's go and take a look first. This child doesn't have any hair in his mouth. If we say, I said, bring me the sword." Li Shimin roared. Although most people didn't hear it. But Wei Shuyu and the others, who had been paying attention to this, could tell from Li Shimin's expression that something bad had happened. The few of them hurriedly gathered together. "I say, brothers, what's going on? Why do I feel that Master Li's expression doesn't look right? Let's go and ask that child. He should have heard something. I suddenly have a bad feeling. Li Gan is going to be in trouble." The few of them waited for Li Shimin to leave, then grabbed the child and asked, "Let me ask you, what did that master say just now?" Little baby was scared silly. "He only gave me a steamed bun. If you want to eat it, Wei Shuyu glared at him. "Let me ask you, what did he say?" "He asked me where Guzi and the others went." "Then what did he say in the end?" The child thought for a moment and said, "I think he said something about his sister-in-law being so cheap." Sword. F***CK. Something F***King big had happened. The few of them knew what cheap meant. His Majesty was going to kill someone. Who was he going to kill? Could it be with a chicken? Hiss. Several people could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. They hurriedly followed Li Shimon's direction and ran. This scene was also seen by Wei Zheng, who was observing and recording how Dugo recorded the disaster victims and how he distributed the food. He had originally wanted to make a complete copy of this and bring it back to Chang and to use on Chang. But now, seeing Wei Shuyu and the others running wildly, and in front of them, Li Shimon was holding a shiny thing in his hand, and was taking large strides forward, they were instantly shocked. De Bing, come here quickly. Wei Zheng did not care about anything else. He hurriedly called out to Dugo and asked, "What's going on?" Dugo had been busy since he woke up in the morning. He did not even have time to pee, so how could he care about this? He glanced in the direction the few of them were running and said in a muffled voice, "They seem to be looking for that kid Li Gan. He disappeared before dawn. I don't know what he's doing." Wei Zheng's heart could not help but skip a beat. Something bad had happened. To make the emperor so angry all of a sudden, it meant that he could not care about anything else. Wei Zheng kicked the paper and pen in his hand into his clothes. He hurriedly lifted his robe and chased in the direction Qing Chumo and the others had run. The strange movement here finally attracted the attention of Sun Simiao, who was observing the cooking in the pot and a bowl of porridge with bone-strengthening powder. Seeing Wei Zheng in such a panic, he couldn't help but jump in fright when he took a closer look. He hurriedly beckoned to Dugo. "Kid, carry the old man and catch up with them quickly." Chapter 588. Although the word chicken was still very common in the Tang dynasty, it was still a very lowly thing. If it was an ordinary person, it would be nothing. But what was the crown prince of a country? He represented the imperial family. So many people were busy helping the victims of the disaster, but what was the crown prince doing? How could this not make Li Shimon angry? At this moment, Li Shimon was holding his sword with a frosty expression. Behind him, all the Jianghu guards were fan-shaped to protect Li Shimon from both sides. They also saw the anger on the emperor's face. Everyone couldn't help but sweat as they held the Modeo hidden in their robes. After Li Shimon circled around a mountain ridge, he saw a chicken pen made of bamboo that stretched as far as the eye could see. Not far from the chicken pen, there was a small stream that flowed from a cave on a mountain. A large group of people were gathered together, doing something unknown. In the middle of the crowd, Li Qingxian's eye-catching robe was recognized by Li Shimon and the others at a glance. Next to Li Qingxian was a banner with the words "Help the Victims, Chicken Dinner" written on it. Seeing these words, Li Shimon couldn't help but feel dizzy. When everyone saw this scene, they couldn't help but feel their heads explode. What was the crown prince doing? He was king courting death. It was no wonder that the emperor was so furious. So that was it. While Xiao Gizi was shocked, he quietly whispered to a Jianghu guard, "Immediately go and ask Zhang Feng to come and save the emperor. If he plays, I won't let you off easily." When the Jianghu guard heard this, his legs trembled and he ran away in fear. How could Li Shimon care so much? He looked at Li Qingxian, who was lying on the recliner, waving a fan and drinking beer. He was so angry. "Lao Tzu hasn't eaten properly for 3 days, you unfilial son. What are you doing? I asked you to come here to let you learn Zhang Feng's skills. I thought you learned something, but this is what you learned? Unfilial son. Kneel down." Li Shimon finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He shouted angrily, raised his sword, and rushed down. Just as he was instructing Guzi and the others to skillfully pluck the feathers, wash the ducks, and wrap them with banana leaves, he faintly heard a loud roar. At first, he was slightly surprised. However, he didn't think much of it when he heard the noise of Guzi and the others. He thought that it was an auditory hallucination. Anyone would have an auditory hallucination in the midst of the buzzing of these hundreds of people. "Guzi, you're mistaken. You have to put the seasoning into the chicken's stomach first. Otherwise, who can eat it if you make it like this? It's tasteless. And you, the few of you, are the eggs cooked like that?" It's Juzi and Yu Huangzhuabang. Just as he was giving instructions to Sun Go, Zi and the rest of the group, a huge force suddenly smashed onto his head. Li Qingxian's head instantly became dizzy, and he fell heavily onto the ground. Unfilial son. What are you doing here? I'm going to kill you. Li Shimin was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. From afar, Li Qingxian seemed to be lying there. However, when he got closer, Li Shimin only wanted to vomit blood. Li Qingxian was waving a fan with one hand and eating a big chicken drumstick with the other. That wasn't much. What was more hateful was that there were hundreds of people watching from the side. How could you have the nerve to eat it? Li Shimin pointed the sword in his hand at Li Qingxian's neck and shouted angrily, "Unfilial son, what are you doing?" Father, I'm cooking chicken. Pa. It would have been better if Li Shimin didn't hear it. Once he heard it, the sword in his hand slapped Li Qingxian's face from the side. He was so angry that his entire body was trembling. When Xiao Gizi saw this, he hurriedly went forward to support Li Shimin and said, "Master, you have to take care of your body. Don't be angry. You have to listen to what young master is doing." "What is he doing? Do you think I'm blind and can't see it?" Li Shimin pushed Xiao Gizi away. At this moment, Wei Shuyu and the others also rushed over. When they saw this scene, they instantly had a headache. Damn it. This grandson, you mother of **Ker, what time is it now, and you're still having fun here? Even if you want to die, don't do it like this, okay? They couldn't help but rush forward to mediate the fight. "Master Li, please calm down and listen to what Li Qingxian has to say, okay? Li Qingxian hasn't slept during this period because of this matter. He's been dreaming about how to solve the food shortage problem all day long. We can guarantee that. Otherwise, why would we let him slack off today? He hasn't slept for the past few days, so we'll let him take a break today and have a good rest. Calm down first and listen to what he has to say." Plop. Plop, plop. At this moment, the commoners who were originally drooling over the roasted chicken and duck all knelt down in unison. Li Shimin was stunned. He raised his sword high and never put it down. Wei Shuyu and the others were also stunned. The two people who had just carried Sun Simiao over were stunned. At this moment, everyone was stunned. They saw the refugees uniformly kowtowing to Li Shimin and saying, "Master, please spare young master." Chapter 589. Li Shimin was dumbfounded. After a while, he said, "You all, get up first." "No, sir, if you don't put down the sword, we won't get up." An old man in the crowd walked to Li Shimin's feet with tears streaming down his face. He hugged Li Shimin's leg and sobbed, "Sir, although I don't know why you're so angry, this young master is saving our lives." Hearing this, Li Shimin could not help but be moved. He squatted down, personally helped the old man up, and asked, "Old Zhang, I would like to ask old Zhang to explain in detail. Speaking of the family's misfortune, this is my son. Originally I wanted him to come here. Sir, you've misunderstood the young master." The old man interrupted Li Shimin and pointed to the group of refugees behind him. "We came here yesterday. When we were looking for a house to build, we met the young master here. At that time, although we ate Prince Zhang's porridge, we haven't eaten for almost 10 days. How could that be enough? So we smelled the aroma and came here. Young master, you've been roasting chicken here since last night. Otherwise, this old man would have to report to the king of hell this morning." Li Shimin looked at Li Qingxian suspiciously. "What's going on?" Li Qingxian didn't dare to lie. He said, "When I returned to the mountain yesterday, I didn't see Feng Zi, so I looked around. In the end, I found them roasting chicken here. This chicken is the most delicious chicken I've ever eaten. So I thought that if we don't have food to feed the chickens, a large number of them will starve to death every day. So I thought of using this method to divide the chickens and eat them. So I learned this skill from Zhang Feng and taught it to them. I remembered father's teachings and what Feng Zi said before. Give a man a fish, but don't teach him to fish. That's why I decided to roast the chicken for them to eat, and at the same time, I wanted them to learn some skills. Li Shimin finally understood after listening to everyone's explanation. Lao Li. You've wrongly gone. At this moment, Zhang Feng slowly squeezed his way through the crowd. When he saw the bloodstain on Li Gan's swollen face, he could not help but pat him on the shoulder. Next time when you do something like this, can't you at least tell me? Must I be tortured? As he spoke, Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin and said, You too. This is your son after all. How can you bear to hit him? All right. Since you're here, why don't you take a look at your son's chicken? What are you still standing there for? Go get the chicken for your father. Zhang Feng glared at Li Qingxian. Li Qingxian also came to a sudden realization. At this moment, the crowd burst into laughter. Young master, save the chicken but for me. No, the chicken in that pit has been cooked for a long time. Young master, take the chicken in that pit first. Otherwise, it will be burnt later. Young master, I haven't eaten chicken this morning. This time, save the chicken rack for me. I have to bring it back for my wife to taste. All right. Everyone here today has it. This young master. When Li Qingxian heard this, he turned around and wanted to boast that everyone present had it. However, when he saw Zhang Feng and Li Shimin's expressions, he hurriedly shrunk his neck and lowered his head to shout at the two of them. Why are you still standing there? Get the chicken. Several people hurriedly dug out dozens of basin-sized mud lumps from the fire pit. Li Shimin was dumbfounded. Sun Simiao was also dumbfounded. Fengzi, what is this thing? Can it be eaten? Little friend Zhang Feng, what is this thing? Li Shimin and Sun Simiao asked almost at the same time. At this moment, when the refugees saw these mud lumps, their eyes instantly widened. This is beggar's chicken. I made it. Beggar's chicken? Li Shimin and Sun Simiao looked at each other, their faces full of question marks. Beggar's chicken? The crown prince was actually making beggar's chicken? What kind of scandal was this? Just when Li Shimin was about to get angry, Zhang Feng slapped his forehead and explained, Well, what I mean is that the method of making this thing is so simple that even beggars can make it. And as you can see, this thing doesn't need a stove. It can be made with local materials. It's a must-have for home travel. In his early years, Li Shimin often fought in the north and south. Basically, food was roasted on a fire or stewed in a pot. When had he ever seen something like this? Not to mention Sun Simiao. After entering the deep mountains and forests, he basically ate one meal after another. When there was food, he would either eat it raw or roast it on a fire. When had he ever seen such a cooking method? One was the emperor, and the other was the drug god. Not to mention that they had eaten all the delicacies in the world, they had eaten most of them. It was just that they had never seen cooking without rice. The two of them couldn't help but lick their lips when they saw Li Qingxian personally knock open the mud lumps and reveal the yellow chicken buttocks. After all, their stomachs had been filled with gruel for the past few days. Now that they saw such a magical thing, how could they bear it? Li Qingxian found 2 banana leaves for the 2 chickens and handed them to Li Shimin and Sun Simiao. Godly doctor, father, please taste this chicken. Chapter 590. Only then did Li Shimin notice that Li Qingxian's face was full of traces of being drowned. Even the hair on his forehead had been burned by the fire. Li Shimin didn't take the chicken. Instead, he helped Li Qingxian brush his hair before taking the chicken. He laughed and said, Good. I'll also try the chicken you made. I'd like to see how much of Feng Zi's teachings you've inherited. Zhang Feng couldn't help but roll his eyes. Lao Li, that's not right. What do you mean by that? You seem to be saying that your son is here to steal my teachings? Feng Zi, what are you talking about? Come, eat chicken. Come, this tastes great. I left it especially for you. When Qing Chumo saw that Zhang Feng was about to argue with Li Shimin, he hooked his arm around Zhang Feng's neck and bent Zhang Feng's waist. Qing Chumo was already a little shorter than Zhang Feng. With this, Zhang Feng almost couldn't breathe. Zhang Feng finally caught his breath. When he saw the chicken butt right next to his mouth, all the hair on his body stood on end. No, no, no. I don't have the fortune to enjoy such a delicacy. If you like it, you can have it, you can have it. When Qing Chumo heard this, his eyes lit up. Just like that, under Zhang Feng's shocked gaze, he threw the chicken butt into his mouth and chewed it deliciously. However, other than the yellow grease at the corner of his mouth, Zhang Feng almost threw up his dinner from last night. He hurriedly squatted beside Sun Simiao for protection. Sun Simiao ate very slowly at first. He tore off a piece of chicken breast and handed the rest of the meat to the old man who had just knelt at Li Shimin's feet. The old man was so touched that he thanked Sun Simiao profusely. Don't be like this. I feel guilty. Sun Simiao patted the old man's shoulder and pulled him to sit down. He took the wine gourd from his waist and shared it with the old man. Old man, where are you from? This old man is from Lantian. Oh. Sun Simiao nodded. Old man Lantian has been there before. That place is indeed very rich. Sigh. It's all because of these locusts. The old man could not help but sigh. Isn't that so? If it wasn't for that divine doctor's son using that magical herb to smoke the grasshopper to death, and then using the grasshopper to make it into an edible item for us to sell for a little money, this old man reckons that I would have starved to death long ago. Sun Simiao was stunned. He glanced at Li Shimin. Then he looked at Zhang Feng. He couldn't help but be enlightened. He had heard from Li Shimin about what Zhang Feng had done before. This kid didn't want to be famous, so he made such a fuss. But now that the medicine was born, he had to have a good reason. Thus, the emperor used his given name. He didn't know what was going on before, but last night, after a long talk with Li Shimin, he knew the truth. He couldn't help but cherish Zhang Feng's talent. Chapter 591. Li Shimin was in a good mood. Especially during this period of time, this was the best time. Not only did he see the hard work of Li Qingxian and the rest of the next generation, but he also saw the true power of Zhang Feng. However, when he thought that all of this would belong to him in the future, Li Shimin's heart couldn't help but become excited again. Li Shimin was very excited. After personally cooking a chicken with Li Qingxian, he was in a good mood. Come, all of you come and roast this chicken. I'll make the decision. Roast all of them. Everyone on the mountain will get one. When Zhang Feng heard this, his eyes widened. He pulled Li Shimin to the side and hurriedly said, Lao Li, are you crazy? Although your son is awesome, you can't spoil things like this, right? Do you know how many people are on the mountain now? If you eat it today, what will you do in the future? Li Shimin patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and didn't say anything. He called out and everyone returned to the small wooden house. At this time, the news of Zhang Feng's salt production and Zhang Feng's rescue of the locust plague had spread like wildfire on the mountain. Everyone was so excited that it was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Now that there was a miracle doctor and a rich man who gave each of them a chicken, everyone knelt down in front of the small wooden house and excitedly threw themselves into the construction work again. Not only did he save their lives with food, but he also took out all the chickens for them to eat. Not only that, if Zhang Feng didn't produce such expensive and cheap fine salt, they would still be jealous. Now that Zhang Feng was in trouble, if they didn't do their best to get this thing done, then were they still human? They weren't even worthy of animals. Animals also knew that after eating the food of the owner, they still had to follow the owner. Not to mention them, who were made of flesh and blood. At this time, after making enough noise, Li Shimin and the rest finally sat in the small wooden house, sweating profusely. Lao Li, tell me. Although the food problem is solved now, we can't. I know what you want to say. Li Shimin waved his hand. Xiao Gizi hurriedly added, my squire Li has already taken back all the chickens and ducks that were previously released outside Chang'an City. Not only are they being distributed to the people of Chang'an City for free, but half of the chickens and ducks are also being prepared to be given to brother Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng was stunned. His face was filled with disdain. Half? How much can half be? Li Shimin glared at him. What? You think 300,000 chickens and ducks are too few? Puff. Zhang Feng spat out a mouthful of beer onto Ching Chimo's mouth and hurriedly asked, what did you say? How much? 300,000? Why are there so many? Li Shimin felt helpless. Isn't this your bad idea? At that time, when we were doing business with Tubo, we said something about exchanging things for food. This Tubo was like a madman. He was afraid that these things couldn't survive. Cows, sheep, and horses were fine, but these chickens, ducks, and pigs were all given to us. He only asked for 100,000 don of food. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel dizzy. Then, how many chickens and ducks do you have in total now? Li Shimin was stunned. Hey, old Wei, how many chickens and ducks do we have? Wei Zheng was also stunned by the question. He hurriedly said, let me see. As he spoke, he took out a small red book that he always carried with him from his embroidered robe and began to flip through it. After a while, Wei Zheng said, now, there are 475,600 chickens and ducks outside Chang'an City. Every day, thousands of chickens and ducks starve to death or are trampled to death by other chickens and ducks. The daily consumption of food is more than 10 don, hiss. Zhang Feng couldn't help but gasp. My goodness, 470,000 don? Lao Li, did you rob Tubo? Otherwise, how could you have so many chickens and ducks? Li Shimin was speechless and gave a wry smile. How would I know? At that time, people in Tubo didn't have enough to eat, and countless people starved to death. How could there be such things as fodder that you made? So, under the wise decision of the current emperor, I happened to have some business with people in Tubo. So, they first said that they would leave the chickens and ducks with me. But in the end, didn't the plague of locusts break out? They simply exchanged these chickens and ducks for 100,000 don of food. If not, how could I be short of food now? Li Shimin couldn't help but sigh. He miscalculated. At that time, if he had listened to Zhang Feng's words and gathered all the food in the country, how could there be such a field now? On the contrary, the chickens and ducks that were popular at that time had now become another problem besides solving the problem of food for the people. These chickens and ducks were far more than the so-called 400,000, and this was only the chickens and ducks gathered outside Chang'an City. What if the chickens and ducks in other places were added? How much would that be? Thinking of these chickens and ducks, Li Shimin began to have a headache. Damn it, it was really, damn it. However, Zhang Feng couldn't help but pat Li Shimin's shoulder excitedly and said, Lao Li, I have something to discuss with you. Li Shimin couldn't help but be shocked. What's the matter? Give me all your chickens and ducks. Do you know this time, you've made a fortune? Zhang Feng was very excited. Originally, old he and the others shook their heads and sighed that Zhang Feng was a fool every time they met. But they didn't know that although Zhang Feng had lost 20,000 don of food, after hearing that there were so many chickens and ducks at this time, Zhang Feng was very excited. Zhang Feng couldn't help but recite a poem again. One must enjoy life to the fullest. Don't let the golden cup be empty against the moon. I am born to be useful. Money will come back after it is spent. Chapter 592. Li Shimin obviously didn't understand what Zhang Feng wanted to do. For him, these chickens and ducks were still manageable for the time being. However, if all 200,000 chickens and ducks were to be driven to Shao Mountain, it would not be a small problem, but a big problem. Now, these chickens and ducks were all fat and strong. Even the piglets, who were usually as thin as firewood, were now as strong as calves. This was the problem that Li Shimin had a headache. But now, looking at Zhang Feng's appearance, he seemed to be very excited. This made Li Shimin confused. Fengzi, are you okay? What do you want to do with these chickens and ducks? Sun Simiao couldn't help but narrow his eyes and look at Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng didn't speak. Instead, he smiled mysteriously and waved at Qing Chumo. Qing Chumo instantly understood. He rushed out of the door excitedly. This scene made Li Shimin, Wei Zheng, and Sun Simiao even more confused. What was he doing? Did this kid want to? Just when he was confused, Qing Chumo came in with 2 bowls of steaming porridge. Master Li, you have the porridge. Dr. Sun, have the porridge. Looking at the oily layer of grease on the bowl and the smell of bone-strengthening powder, Li Shimin's eyes couldn't help but light up. This is made with bone-strengthening powder. Zhang Feng didn't speak. He just signaled Li Shimin to take a sip. Li Shimin and Sun Simiao subconsciously took a sip. Then, both of them couldn't help but frown. Master Li, there seems to be something else in this porridge besides bone-strengthening powder. When Li Shimin heard Sun Simiao's words, he couldn't help but frown. He took another sip and stirred it with the spoon. Yes, this porridge is thicker than normal porridge. This is the effect of the bone-strengthening powder. However, it shouldn't be this thick. Moreover, after eating it, there's a taste of muscle. However, there's a faint foul smell. However, after being mixed with pepper, the foul smell has been reduced, but it has become another exquisite taste. That's right, said Zhang Lisheng. That's right. Sun Simiao nodded. This old man also tasted a few medicinal herbs in this congee. Li Shimin's eyes lit up. Speak your mind. Sun Simiao slowly drank the porridge bit by bit. He couldn't help but finish the entire bowl of porridge. Then, he closed his eyes and savored the taste for a long time. Occasionally, he would pick up the bowl and sniff it. This seems to have added star anise, cinnamon, and bay leaf. Am I right? Sun Simiao asked as he looked at Zhang Feng with a burning gaze. Zhang Feng could not help but give him a thumbs up. Dr. Sun is indeed Dr. Sunday. You can taste the essence in a bowl of porridge. That's right. In this porridge, not only did I add muscle, but I also added pork and bone-strengthening powder. Lao Li, do you still remember what I said before? These chickens, ducks, and pigs are good stuff. Even if this locust plague is over, these things will still make us rich. Do you still remember? Li Shimin nodded. Zhang Feng had said that before, but now, other than eggs, who would be willing to eat chicken? Even if those people were willing to eat it, although the chicken was good, they only had so little money. It wasn't even enough to buy food. Who would buy chicken with that money? There was nothing to feed their own chickens. Who would buy chickens if they ate them? Wouldn't that be a fool? However, this was what he thought at that time. Now, Li Shimin picked up the bowl in shock and tasted it again carefully. He couldn't help but be a little shocked. At this moment, Sun Simiao couldn't help but laugh. Wonderful, wonderful. Little friend, this old man has learned a lot today. This bone-strengthening powder and fried locusts, there is no need to talk about them. Although this old man doesn't know the essence, this old man has drunk that thing before. Drinking it can indeed make one's body strong, and there are no side effects. It's like eating a caddy of meat soup. At this time, this star anise leaf and other herbs also have a very good effect on improving the digestive system. It can even make blood. On the other hand, this thing also has a very good effect on covering the fishy smell. Let's not talk about the chicken. Let's talk about the pork. Although pork is slowly making its way into the rice bowl of the people, this thing has too strong of a taste. In the end, it's difficult to be elegant. However, these few herbs have changed the ingredient itself, allowing it to perfectly integrate with this porridge. Although this old man still doesn't know the essence of this thing, I'm afraid this old man won't be able to understand it in his lifetime. However, after trying a bowl just now, this old man's stomach tells me. How is it? Li Shimin, Wei Zheng, and the others asked eagerly. Sun Simiao thought for a moment and said, if this old man's guess is right, this bowl of porridge is worth more than 10 copper coins. What? Li Shimin couldn't help but jump in fright. How much did this bowl of porridge cost? However, after thinking about it, he couldn't help but nod his head. The value of this thing really was more than 10 copper coins. Sun Simiao said again, however, this thing is still unknown in terms of its value, but in terms of its practicality. What does everyone lack now? What they lack is food. Therefore, if this bowl of porridge was eaten by someone else, it would last them an entire day. If the officials here could eat 2 bowls of porridge a day, I guarantee that they would all be fat and strong after a month. Chapter 593. Li Shimin's eyes couldn't help but light up. Dr. Sun, are you sure this bowl of porridge can be so magical? How can it not be useful? Zhang Feng was speechless. I say, old Li, you're actually suspecting me now? You know I'm doing this for this thing. Look, my hair is a little white. While speaking, Zhang Feng pointed to his hair. Master Li, we all saw this. Ever since the imperial edict was issued, I don't know what's wrong with this kid, but he locked himself in his room for 3 days. We thought something bad had happened. So this is what he was doing. Wei Shuyu patted her chest loudly. At the same time, she finally figured out what this kid was doing before. Zhang Feng glared at Wei Shuyu. Do you think I'm the same as you? This is a big thing. If it's not done well, it will be a mess. You can forget about sleeping. This thing needs to be prepared in advance, understand? Wei Shuyu and others touched their heads with a confused look. What do you mean by prepared in advance? Zhang Feng couldn't help but roll his eyes. If he chose these idiots who had nothing to do, wouldn't it take hours to explain to them? Get out of here and do your work. It's almost time for dinner. Have you completed your task today? If you haven't, you're not allowed to eat. Hearing this, they scurried away. At this time, there were only 4 people left in the room, Wei Zheng, Dr. Sun, Li Shimin, and Zhang Feng. The 4 of them looked at each other. Finally, Sun Simiao asked, I've always had a question. Why did you ask me to come up the mountain this time? I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it. Zhang Feng patted his forehead and said, this time, I asked you to come here for this bowl of porridge. If it weren't for Lao Li's 10,000 dan grain and these chickens and ducks, there would really be a big problem this time. But now that we have these things, I boldly asked Dr. Sun to find some herbs on this mountain. Sun Simiao couldn't help but wonder, then why are you looking for herbs? Yes, Fengzi, why are you looking for herbs? Tell me, what do you want? Where do I have the 1,000-year-old ginseng that I've been collecting for a long time? You. Before he finished, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, you forgot that your son has already lost the 1,000-year-old ginseng to me. Li Shimin's eyes went black, and he almost fell to the ground. When did this happen? Why don't I know about it? Last time when we were playing mahjong. Zhang Feng ignored the dumbfounded Li Shimin and continued to look at Sun Simiao, who was stroking his beard. Dr. Sun, this bowl of porridge actually has a name. I call it medicinal cuisine. This thing can not only be used on ordinary people, but it can also be used on rich people to treat their illness. Sun Simiao was a little surprised. He didn't know the specific effects of this thing, but this medicine could be mixed with ingredients. This was a method that existed since ancient times, but there weren't many that could really achieve the balance of yin and yang. However, in this bowl of porridge, if some other medicinal herbs were added, such as the Hautuinia herb, and some other things, then this bowl of porridge would really become a bowl of medicinal cuisine with extraordinary value. Sun Simiao couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng, a little dumbfounded. Little friend, I wonder where you learned your skills from. Hearing this, Wei Jing hurriedly touched Li Shimin to wake him up. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, Old mister, you don't have to do this. These are all things that my master occasionally mentioned when he was teaching me. Hearing this, Sun Simiao was a little surprised. This was just an occasional mention. Could it be like this? If he were to seriously study medicine, what would happen? May I ask? Well, don't ask. This is a sad thing, I don't want to talk about it. It would be strange if he could explain it clearly. He had heard of this man's name in the future. He was simply the second Tang Seng. No, the second was Du Dabing. That guy was really poisonous. Li Shimin couldn't help but say, Dr. Sun, Zhang Feng's master has gone to travel, maybe. So if he doesn't want to talk about it, you don't have to ask. There are many wonderful people in this world, but we can't meet everyone. Although we can't meet his master at this time, I think this porridge of Feng Zi will definitely become a good thing. Li Shimin couldn't wait for a long time. Now that Sun Simiao had said so, it must be true that this thing was definitely something good. Then, the most important thing now was, Li Shimin wanted this thing. He didn't want to make a fortune with this thing, but if this thing could be used on the disaster victims in the world, although there wasn't much bone-strengthening powder left and it couldn't be used everywhere, there couldn't be more chickens, ducks, and pigs. Once it was added, then, Li Shimin couldn't sit still. He said, Well, Feng Zi, you also know that there are disasters everywhere in the Tang dynasty now. You don't want to see all the disaster victims come to you, do you? So, Feng Zi, can I make a deal with you? Chapter 594. How could Zhang Feng not know what Li Shimin was going to do? He had already given them so many things. Moreover, there were hundreds of thousands of chickens and ducks. Even if Lao Li and his family ate them all day long, they wouldn't be able to finish them all. Therefore, Zhang Feng spread his hands. Brother, I know what you're going to do even if you don't tell me. Since you're here today, this is also what I wanted to tell you. Lao Li, although it's a bit unkind to make money from a national disaster, this is really a profitable business. Li Shimin was a little speechless. This kid really thought of himself as a businessman. However, the Tang dynasty was really short of money now. Whether it was the manufacturing of the iron ships or iron carriages, it would cost a lot of money. Also, the soldiers stationed at the border would need a huge amount of military funds. Although they had made some money before, after the locust plague, the treasury that had just been filled up was a little empty again. At this time, Li Shimin understood what Zhang Feng wanted to do after hearing what Zhang Feng said. You mean to sell this bowl of porridge to those rich people? Zhang Feng stretched out a hand and shook it. He said mysteriously, yes, and no. After all, we don't have much bone-strengthening powder now. We can't make this thing like this. This is one of the reasons why I asked Elder Sun to come up the mountain. On the one hand, I want Elder Sun to find some medicinal herbs that can replace the bone-strengthening powder and add them to this porridge. Moreover, I want to make this porridge into two different things. One is the kind that doesn't add the bone-strengthening powder and can fill the stomach, but the improvement of the physique is minimal. The other is the kind that doesn't add the bone-strengthening powder, but the taste and the effect of strengthening the physique are the same, or even stronger. What Zhang Feng wanted to do this time was actually a distribution model, which meant that he wanted to divide the same thing into 3, 6, and 9 grades. Although there was no hierarchy to this thing, and it was something that those unscrupulous merchants had originally divided for the sake of profit, he was now a merchant. Moreover, this great Tang wasn't like the modern world where everyone was equal. If this thing was really made into something like fine salt, then it would truly be a mess. However, for the people of the Tang dynasty, this thing was really a life-saving thing. Don't worry if the poor can't afford it. This thing can be reduced to the price of a bowl of porridge. It's just that the porridge is slightly more expensive. This porridge can be sold for money in the future. Of course, it's impossible now. There are so many chickens and ducks now. There were so many of them that they were consuming food every day. Since that was the case, they might as well bring them in. But what about after the disaster? The price of this item was bound to increase. However, this was not something that Zhang Feng could concern himself with. Those who liked it would naturally buy it. However, it would be different if medicinal herbs were added. A food shortage was a disaster for the commoners, but for the rich, it was just a matter of not having enough to eat. The oil in their stomachs, it was time to hang up. This porridge was tailor-made for them. Why? Wasn't it just to take money out of their pockets? And then use it on the construction of the academy? Before the construction of the academy began, Zhang Feng thought that it was so simple. However, when he really started it, he realized that this thing needed money. This was the King money-burning machine. Although Li Gan took the initiative to fight and paid for it, he couldn't let him keep paying for it, right? This was a bottomless pit. Even if he sold all of Lao Li's property, it wouldn't be enough. However, at this time, everything depended on Sun Simiao. No matter how well he said it, if Dr. Sun couldn't figure out this thing, it would be useless. Sun Simiao frowned. His slightly pale fingers stroked his beard again and again. After a while, he said, "Little friend Zhang, although this old man doesn't agree with your business, I can understand that you are a guest because of the construction of the academy." Hearing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but sigh loudly. "Oh, elder son knows me well. In this 50,000 mu of land, which part of it doesn't need money? Cultivation requires money. At this time, everyone needs money to eat. Moreover, you also know that this school doesn't charge a single cent. Tell me, where do you think I'll get the money from? Isn't it just to earn a little money from these things to make my academy better? When the time comes, it can also let the people of the world do what they want." Zhang Feng said bitterly. Sun Simiao couldn't help but be moved by how difficult and costly the construction was. "Little friend Zhang Feng, this old man has never admired any young man in his life. When I first saw you, I also felt that you were an extraordinary young man. However, from the time I came to the mountain until now, what have I seen? You are a person who is truly seeking the welfare of the people of the Tang dynasty. If this old man can help you at this time, it is equivalent to helping the poor people of the world. Don't worry about this matter. This old man has already known it. However, this old man has a doubt in his heart. Little friend, please explain it to me." Seeing that the biggest problem had been solved, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel relieved. "Elder son, please tell me. I will definitely tell you everything I know." "Then why did you choose pork and not other things?" "It's cheap." Li Shimin was stunned. Sun Simiao was stunned. The two looked at each other and said, "Say that again?" Chapter 595. Li Shimin was dumbfounded. Sun Simiao was dumbfounded. Wei Zheng was dumbfounded. Everyone in the world knew that pork tasted awful. It would not be a big deal if it was eaten by commoners, but what were they making now? What kind of rich people would eat this medicinal cuisine? How fishy would it be? How disgusting was it? How could they eat it? That would be a strange thing. If they really did that, there would be big problems. However, Zhang Feng did not answer. Instead, he ran to the door and yelled, "Tai Niu, go get Li Qian. Tell him I'm looking for him." A moment later, a black-faced Li Qingxian rushed into the wooden hut, sweating profusely. "What's the matter?" "I'm busy." Li Qingxian bowed to Sun Simiao and Li Shimin as soon as he entered the hut. Zhang Feng patted Li Qingxian on the shoulder and asked, "We're all on the same side here, so I won't beat around the bush. Let me ask you, have you found the carpenter I asked you to find?" I found him. He's an old eunuch from the palace." Sun Simiao was dumbfounded when he heard that. Li Shimin already knew, but wasn't he talking about pigs? Why was it related to this again? However, the two of them did not ask anything. They waited quietly for Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng was overjoyed when he heard that. That's great. Invite him in. I want to ask him something. Li Qingxian hesitated. However, after some thought and seeing Li Shimon's expression, he walked to the door and called in the eunuch he had brought with him. The old eunuch was very old. He had a head of silver hair, but his mouth was very thin. There was no beard on his chin. Zhang Feng was stunned. He pulled Li Qingxian to the side and asked, "He must be a eunuch?" Li Qingxian rolled his eyes. "Didn't I just say it? I went through a lot of trouble to find a eunuch who just retired from the palace. Do you want him? If you don't, then forget it." He always felt that this matter was a little awkward, and he unconsciously felt a chill in his crotch. But since Zhang Feng wanted it, he didn't dare to say anything. He could only keep his head down and do his job. Seeing Li Qingxian like this, Zhang Feng's mood was greatly relieved. He circled the old eunuch a few times. Although the old eunuch was able to maintain his composure, how could he remain calm? Other than this idiot in front of him, the other three people were all people who could make the ground shake with a stomp of their feet. The emperor, the godly doctor, and the crown prince, he could not afford to offend any of them. If it weren't for eunuch Xiao Gizi's constant reminders, he would probably have knelt down by now. At this moment, he could only grin with a smile that was uglier than crying and bow his body as he stood. After Zhang Feng finished looking around, the old eunuch said, "Greetings, Prince Zhang. Greetings to Master Li, young Master Li, and Dr. Sun." Sun Simiao rolled his eyes, looked at Li Shimon, and then looked at Zhang Feng playfully. Zhang Feng didn't care about the red tape and said, "Let me ask you something." "Old man." Seeing that the old eunuch's expression wasn't good, he hurriedly changed his words and said, "Old eunuch, let me ask you something. Please tell me honestly, okay? Of course, if this is your privacy, just pretend that I didn't say anything." How could the old eunuch not agree? He hurriedly said, "Prince Zhang, please ask. It's my honor to leave my body behind to do something for Prince Zhang." "Good." Zhang Feng patted the old eunuch's shoulder and said, "Since old eunuch said so, then if I, Zhang Feng, treat you unfairly in the future, then I'm worse than a pig or a dog." The old eunuch was shocked when he heard this. Zhang Feng said, "Don't be like that. What I asked may be a secret to you and the palace. Are you sure you can say this? Can he say? Can he not say it? If he doesn't say it, he'll die." The old eunuch was about to cry. He suddenly felt that this grandson was even more long-winded than the monks in the temple. "If you have something to say, would it kill you to say it all in one breath?" But he didn't dare to say anything. He was afraid. He was afraid that he wouldn't live past tomorrow. He could only take a deep breath and say, "Prince Zhang, please ask." After Zhang Feng was sure that the old eunuch wouldn't do anything, he carefully asked, "Let me ask you. How many years have you been a blacksmith in the palace? Or should I say, how many people have handled your work? Of course, I'm not doubting your craftsmanship. It's just that this matter needs to be confirmed. Otherwise, you can't be the slightest bit careless. Otherwise, many lives will be lost. If things go wrong, we might all be finished." When Zhang Feng said this, Li Qingxian's expression suddenly changed. He instantly bent over and his legs trembled. Son of a bitch. This grandson, he can't really be thinking of doing that, right? F***ck Lao Tzu is the crown prince. This, he wanted to cry. However, it wasn't just him. At this time, Li Shimon and Wei Zhang's expressions changed. Sun Simiao's expression changed meaningfully. What is this kid trying to do? Is he really thinking of? However, at this time, the emperor didn't say anything, so he didn't interrupt. He roughly guessed why Zhang Feng called him here. There was one thing he couldn't figure out. It was just to go to school. Was there a need to be a blacksmith? What is he trying to do? Chapter 596. However, Sun Simiao didn't care about that because the emperor didn't say anything. After all, his son was trembling in fear. Zhang Feng did not notice this, but the old eunuch was already trembling all over. His originally pale face was now a little green. Not only that, the sweat on his face was like beans, falling down with a shwa 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 sound. He could already see death waving at him. However, the emperor didn't say anything. He didn't dare. He could only brace himself and stand there. Hey! Eunuch, you have to tell me in detail. The old eunuch's voice was trembling badly. But seeing that the emperor nodded calmly, he could only brace himself and say, then, I've been in the palace for dozens of years. The palace calls this cleaning the body, also known as Sun Zhen. I started doing this 30 years ago. Zhang Feng's eyes lit up when he heard that. He looked at the old eunuch as if he was looking at a treasure and hurriedly helped him sit down. He even sat next to Wei Zheng. How could the old eunuch dare to sit down? He sat down. He was pushed down by Zhang Feng and stood up again. He didn't sit down until Li Qingxian asked him to. Treasure. This was a treasure. 30 years of experience. It seemed that he couldn't be wrong. Zhang Feng rubbed his hands and squatted next to the old eunuch. Behind him, Li Qingxian was about to explode. He looked at Li Shimin with pleading eyes, but Li Shimin didn't even bother to look at him. Li Qingxian realized that it was going to be a tragedy. However, he couldn't do anything now. He could only brace himself and stand there. Fine, fine. I won't be alone when the time comes. I'd like to see what he's going to do. Zhang Feng asked excitedly while Li Qingxian was in a mess. Eunuch, may I ask how it is? Does that person feel pain? Do you usually use mephisin? After using it, do your wounds fester a lot? Not only the old eunuch, but even Li Shimin's expression changed. What was this kid trying to do? However, Li Shimin didn't interrupt Zhang Feng for the time being before he got the results. He always felt that this kid was going to do something big. As for what it was, Li Shimin didn't know yet. But that was the nature of this kid. In the end, Li Shimin could only wait. How could the old eunuch dare to say a word? His entire body was shaking, and his head felt like it was being pounded by a heavy hammer. What is this? This was an insult to him. If it was anyone else who dared to ask such a question, he would definitely pick up a knife and fight them to the death. What is this? This was their last shred of dignity. It was also the pain hidden in the bottom of his heart. Who didn't want to be a man? But because of many things, they had no choice but to become eunuchs. What are you doing now? This was exposing his scars. But what could he do? He could only say in a muffled voice, before I use the knife, I will make the person drunk. Then, I only need to use a knife to clean up the wound. As for the wound, a handful of lime powder and a few days of wormwood. Basically, the person can walk. The old eunuch's words were very awkward. At this time, everyone in the room, except for Zhang Feng, felt a chill in their crotch and sat up unnaturally. Fengzi, what are you trying to do? Say it clearly. Li Qingxian finally couldn't take it anymore. Zhang Feng waved his hand, indicating for Li Qingxian to stop talking. Then he said, then eunuch, does it hurt? Will it have any effect on the aftermath? The old eunuch wanted to hit someone. The hand hidden in the embroidered robe clenched into a fist, but he didn't dare to. The emperor was here. In the end, the old eunuch resigned himself to fate. He closed his eyes and said, it hurts a lot. That is the last feeling a man will have. It won't hurt after a year, but it will still hurt every time it rains. Prince Zhang should know that place very well. The old eunuch threw caution to the wind. What the hell, what could it be? Didn't he just want to know the details? What could it be? This kid was asking so many questions. Could it be that he really wanted to do something to the students who came here? At the thought of being able to do something to those students, the old eunuch felt a wave of pleasure. There was no other reason. Perhaps this was a kind of psychological distortion, but there was no other way. If he was invited here, then it definitely wouldn't be to ask if it hurt. Moreover, although Zhang Feng was known by very few people in the palace, an old man like him would still know a little. At this time, after hearing Zhang Feng's detailed questions, he suddenly couldn't understand Zhang Feng. Logically speaking, Zhang Feng was such a genius, but how could he be so concerned about these things? Not only did the emperor and the crown prince come, but he even invited the godly Dr. Sun Simiao. What did this mean? This meant that something big was going to happen. The old eunuch didn't know what exactly it was, but it definitely had something to do with his old profession. At this time, Li Qingxian finally couldn't sit still. He immediately went berserk. That, Fengzi, it's time to eat. I'm going to help Dabing and the rest. I'm leaving. Zhang Feng was stunned and hurriedly waved his hand. Where are you going? Wait, I still have something important to say. Scram. Lao Tzu quit. There are very few people who raise it, let alone eat it. Only those who are really poor and can't afford mutton will eat some pork. But do you know that the cost of pork is the cheapest, and its nutritional value? Forget it, you don't know about its nutritional value. Let's talk about its effect. This thing is better than mutton. If you eat too much mutton, you'll feel dry and hot, and it'll be easy to get heaty. But pork is different. Pork not only calms one's qi and blood, but also prevents one from getting heaty. If you're injured, you only need to drink a bowl of meat soup every day. Under the condition that you don't get heaty, you can. Zhang Feng blew on the pork with great gusto. But let alone Li Shimin, even Sun Simiao was a little confused. What was all this? However, he agreed with Zhang Feng on one point. That was, mutton was hot and it was easy to get heaty, so it wasn't good to eat too much. But what did this have to do with craftsmen? Just now, he thought a little about the purpose of Zhang Feng calling him here, but now it seemed that this still didn't seem right. After Zhang Feng finished speaking, Sun Simiao said, "Little friend Zhang Feng, this pork of yours is so good that even this old man wants to eat it. But this still can't make it presentable. And this old man is not talented, so why did you call me here?" Well, Zhang Feng rubbed his chin and said, "Old son, Lao Li, the reason why I'm talking about this today is to completely change this thing about pigs." Change how? Li Shimin and Wei Jing couldn't help but ask. Sun Simiao shook his head speechlessly. For the first time, he felt that Zhang Feng was good at everything, but he was too long-winded. He was even more long-winded than those old men. However, Zhang Feng ignored him. To be precise, Zhang Feng had fallen into his own world and couldn't extricate himself. This is actually the main purpose of calling this eunuch here today. That is, I'm going to castrate all these pigs on Shao Mountain. PFFF. Chapter 598. Li Shimin couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of tea. After waiting for so long, this was it? He thought that Zhang Feng had something unexpected, but he didn't expect him to say this. Pig? What did this mean? Fengzi, what do you mean? If you don't make it clear, this, Li Shimin winked at Sun Simiao, whose face was gradually gloomy, and said. Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly comforted Sun Simiao, "Old Mr. Sun, I didn't mean to offend you, but I really thought of a wonderful idea. Think about it, why is everyone unable to accept this pig now? It's because the smell of the pig is too smelly, and the meat is too dry, but I seriously observed the pig and found that this can actually be changed. Under normal circumstances, it would be considered good for a pig to grow to 50 catties in a year. However, this kid has a way to make these pigs grow to 200 catties in 3 months. What? 200 pounds in 3 months? Are you sure? Li Shimin was shocked. With a bang, he stood up from the chair and couldn't help but ask. Of course, I, Zhang Feng, dare to guarantee with my life. Moreover, not to mention these, I have the ability to even give all the pigs that are running all over the place a month. Not only will they not lose weight, but they will also gain weight. I will also be able to change the taste of their meat and the quality of their meat. Of course, Zhang Feng had a way. Under normal circumstances, no one would eat the pigs now. The reason why there were people raising them was because there were many poor people. They couldn't afford to eat mutton. So even if the meat was smelly, it was very enviable to be able to eat it occasionally. In the final analysis, the blacksmiths of this era were thinking about how to enter the palace and only knew to point the knife at people's crotch, but forgot that this knife could actually make them rich. However, now that Zhang Feng was here, everything had to be changed. The most important thing was that they had to deal with the smell of the meat all the time. It would take a lot of liquor. Moreover, there were so many pigs on the mountain. They had to deal with them. They ate more than people in a day. Who could afford to raise them? He had to think of a way to make them less active and less active. The natural situation was to prevent them from getting pregnant naturally. Then, he would select the ones with good quality and use them as breeding pigs to breed the next generation. Anyway, this thing could give birth to several litters of babies in a year. What was he afraid of? As long as he could find a formula to improve the fibrous structure of the meat so that the meat would not be as dry as before and get rid of the fishy and foul smell, the meat would become an extremely popular dish. Think about how delicious dompa pork, red braised pork, how famous it was. However, it was a pity that in this era where people only knew how to stew in a pot, this kind of delicacy was actually on the verge of extinction. If it were not for the plague of locusts this time, coupled with the fact that the Tibetans despised this thing, would he have been able to pick up such a great treasure? At this time, the old eunuch's face finally looked better. Li Shimin, however, was unable to extricate himself from the shock of being able to increase his weight to 200 kilograms in 3 months. If it could really be done, wouldn't it really work? This kid was able to handle the pork without the slightest fishy smell before. Then, with this live pig and Sun Simiao here, how could he not handle it? Otherwise, he wouldn't say it here. This kid was not a boastful person. Fengzi, are you sure that with Dr. Sun's cooperation, these pigs can get rid of the foul and fishy smell without losing any weight after being embalmed? Yes. It depends on whether Dr. Sun can find a few kinds of herbs that can get rid of the smell. I only know a kind of thing called kudzu vine, as for the others, I don't know. Sun Simiao was silent. Before, the development of the diet was actually secondary. This kid was really a thief, digging a hole here. This pork was to be added to the diet. If the smell was too strong, how could it give people a good taste? If this thing was not added, the taste would lack the oil in it, and it would be impossible to achieve the ideal taste by relying only on the mussels and duck meat. Although Sun Simiao had been studying herbs all his life, he still had some research on which livestock and animals could be treated, and which diseases could not be eaten. Therefore, when Zhang Feng said that he wanted to improve the smell of the pigs, he thought of this point. This wasn't impossible, it was just that no one had thought of it before. The meat was too smelly, mainly because the pig's estrus period was short. If it was completely castrated, with some herbs to promote blood circulation, it was really possible to achieve this point. Not to mention this, if the hundreds of thousands of pigs and the animals raised by the people were completely improved, it would definitely become another way for the people to make a living. After thinking for a long time, Sun Simiao finally nodded. Although this old man is a little disgusted, I also want to see the magical method of our young friend Zhang Feng. This old man will take this job. The sudden appearance of this scholarly robed youth made Zhang Feng think of something. At this time, it was already past mealtime. At this time, people were lying on the ground, dozing off or even snoring. Ching Chumo was lying on a pile of grain. A pair of boots were placed on both sides of him. His legs were propped up as he snored loudly. However, the smell of his feet was even more terrifying than his snoring. That was not important. The most important thing was that the bags of rice under the sky were full of people from Tong Huifang. Zhang Feng seriously suspected that these people had masochistic tendencies. It was so smelly. How could they stand it? However, that was not important. Li Qingxian had long since disappeared without a trace. As for Du Go, Wei Shuyu, and Zhang Sunchong, when they saw Zhang Feng come out of the door, they all coincidentally gathered together. They all knew of the brat at the door, but since Zhang Feng could come, it meant that they could watch a good show. A good show to watch was better than smelling the stench of his feet, right? Feng Zi, this strange person came last night. However, he squatted at the foot of the mountain and did not dare to come up. Today, he came before dawn. However, when he asked if you were here, he just stayed at the gate and did not come in. No one knows what this kid wants to do. While Wei Shuyu was talking, they had already arrived at the gate. Wei Shuyu shouted, "Hey, kid! Aren't you looking for Feng Zi? He's here. If you have something to say, say it." Hearing that, the youth hurriedly tidied up his tattered robe and hurried forward. Although he was dressed in an extremely cold manner and his skin was dark and swarthy, he looked more and more awkward. However, this person gave Zhang Feng a different feeling. As for what was different, Zhang Feng did not know for the time being. "I am Ma Zhou. Greetings to Prince Zhang Feng." The smile on Zhang Feng's face froze. He stared at Ma Zhou and sized him up. Then, he asked, "What's your name?" "Student Ma Zhou." "Greetings to teacher." "Ma Zhou? Which Ma Zhou are you?" "Qinghe Ma Zhou." "Ma Zhou. Qinghe Ma Zhou." Damn. He had picked up a treasure. After Zhang Feng confirmed Ma Zhou's identity, he excitedly grabbed Ma Zhou's hand and said, "What are you doing here?" Ma Zhou did not expect Zhang Feng to be so enthusiastic. He hurriedly said, "I'm here to seek knowledge." "Good. I agree. Come, you, Dabing, quickly arrange a place for him to stay." Du Go was stunned. Wei Shuyu and Zhang Sun were stunned. Everyone who thought they were going to watch a good show was stunned. What was going on? Was this not fooling around? Lao Tzu and the others did not have a place to stay. How could they arrange a place for him? However, the student must complete the missions set by the college and accumulate credits. Those who fail in a year will be expelled from the college and will never be accepted again. The writer is Zhang Feng. After writing the name, Zhang Feng hurriedly brought the cinnabar seal to Ma Zhou and the rest. They looked at the brownish-yellow paper curiously. Zhang Feng looked at Ma Zhou solemnly and said, "Ma Zhou." When Ma Zhou saw how solemn Zhang Feng was, he hurriedly bowed. Student Ma Zhou pays his respects to teacher. Today, under the witness of Huang Tian and everyone else, are you, Ma Zhou, willing to be under Zhang Feng's tutelage? Zhang Feng's solemn voice naturally attracted Li Shimin and the other two to come over to take a look. Ma Zhou hurriedly bent his knees and was about to kneel when Zhang Feng hurriedly berated him. "If you kneel, you will leave the mountain today." Ma Zhou trembled when he heard this. Li Shimin and the rest couldn't help but be puzzled. At this moment, Zhang Feng said pretentiously, "I remember a saint once said that a man has gold under his knees. A man can kneel to heaven and earth, to his parents, to the king of heaven and earth, and to his parents, the dawn, and the common people. If you kneel to me today, my academy will never hire you in the future." As he spoke, Zhang Feng looked around and shouted, "What I said today is the philosophy of White Deer College. Whoever dares to kneel will get lost from Lao Tzu. Don't say that I, Zhang Feng, am a student. Lao Tzu can't afford to lose face like this." When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but be in an uproar. Ma Zhou couldn't help but choke. He shouted, "Student Ma Zhou will remember teacher's words and will never forget it." "Good. Very good. Come, come, come. This is your admission form. Take a look. If you have no objections, sign and stamp it. Previously, Li Shimon's blood was boiling when he heard this. He was still wondering which saint had said these words. However, what the hell was this signature and stamp? No matter how he looked at it, Li Shimon felt that this guy had signed a contract to sell himself. However, this didn't matter. After Ma Zhou thanked Zhang Feng profusely, he saw Sun Simiao and was about to kneel down. However, when he thought of Zhang Feng's words, he quickly stopped and bowed. Student Ma Zhou pays his respects to the godly doctor. He, good, good. Sun Simiao was still as friendly as ever. He chuckled and considered this as a greeting. After that, Sun Simiao asked, young friend, what are you going to arrange for Ma Zhou to do? Well, Zhang Feng couldn't help but look at the old eunuch. Ma Zhou came at the right time. The free pig rearing expert was online.